Last time on Who Knows God Part 2.
Russell walked straight to the front desk, hung his head. The sole attendant was so busy flipping through papers that he showed no interest in Russ whatsoever. "I want to turn myself in," Russell said plainly. The officer walked over. "What did you do?" "I shot a cop." The female officer in the living room kicked the Lalique vase LaRonda brought back from England. Seeing that her work caused no damage, she raised a heavy construction boot and crushed the work of art with her foot. Before LaRonda could fully digest that, one of the officer's machine gun barrels inadvertently smashed and shattered a section of the mirrored wall unit. She smiled and shrugged her shoulders at one of her partners before intentionally breaking the adjacent mirror. Similar to a domino effect, they all became less careful, more destructive, breaking everything they came across, including the portraits on the wall, Tech's gold plaque, candy dish, blender, the screen door to the backyard, and computer monitor. "It is what it is," she told herself, as her husband often would. So she didn't bother getting emotional about any of it. After all, 3 of their own were still recovering from life-threatening injuries. It was what it was. The officers who went upstairs came back down to the delight of the mess. The short, heavy-set one pointed his assault rifle towards the custom brass ceiling and discharged his weapon. "You don't," he yelled before firing again. "Fuck with," and another shot. "Cops." She took a moment to recoup, but she didn't look back. She was firm in her unspoken decision. He was alive. He had his daughter. "I'm gone," LaRonda said in the confines of her head before pushing open the door and walking out of the restaurant. She picked up the pace, faster, faster, until she was all out sprinting. She eased up as she got to the corner, then stopped, posting her back against the window of a Best Buy and exhaling. Now she felt free. Detective Brown, 300 miles. So treat me to a beer, motherfucker. Detective Brown. January 1st, 2010. He turned around again. The mystery man was gone. Detective Brown got up and quickly made his way to the back. He pushed his way through the doors that separated the main body of the church from the foyer, which is where he met the dread. "Interlock your fingers behind your head," Tech said in a weird role reversal. At gunpoint, Detective Brown stepped lightly past the coat racks. "Come here," Tech instructed as if he were the detective. "Stop right there," he said, now removing Brown's gun and taking his cell phone and wallet. "Kick your right leg back to me." "What?" Brown asked. "Kick your fucking leg back," Tech screamed without yelling. The way he held his pistol affirmed his fury. Besides the fact that he was already a known cop shooter, Detective Brown saw nothing in Tech that suggested that he tried some superhero shit. He stepped back from his right foot as if handing Tech the concealed weapon in his ankle holster. "If you move, I'm going to put a bullet right here and right where your heart is," Tech informed him, poking at the left side of his back with the weapon of his gun. He stepped to Brown's side and folded low to his knees, holding his eyes on the cop as if he were holding on to his lifeline. He disarmed him from his ankle holster, and he still felt the need to pat him down. They heard soft voices of what had to be little old ladies descending from the staircase a few feet away. "Put your hands down," Tech said. Detective Brown gave a look back at the dread. "Nigga, you could scream if you want," Tech said in all his calm. "It's just going to be 3 dead people out here instead of 1. He left the choice with Brown as he positioned his weapon near his pocket. The barrel still dead on its target, although Tech kept things obscure through clever positioning. "Praise the Lord," one of the ladies said. "Oh, praise him, sister." Tech fired a good word back at the sisters who crept past slowly. The ladies easily went back to minding their conversation. The more able-bodied of them opened the door for the two who followed in their wake as they disappeared in the church. Brown looked back at Tech as if to say, now what? As if Tech had the answer, he gave the detective a big smile, minus the teeth, and smacked the living daylights out of him with his own gun. 7 minutes later, the echo of small explosions prompted Brown to reach for his missing gun. Happy New Year! Another pop and another. Fresh off unconsciousness, he sat up wondering where on God's earth he was. He could feel the objects that were previously resting on his chest fall to the floor. His cell phone, walkie-talkie, and wallet. Happy New Year! He could hear near and afar. As if struck with total recall, he knew what had happened to him. Tech! He pushed himself wearily to his feet. People congregated inside finally started to make their way out. Happy New Year! Yeah, move on. He shoved the zealous woman aside. He pushed his way through the front door, vaguely understanding where he was. The faint glance of a pair of Timberland boots moving quicker than usual set Brown off and running. Halfway sure himself, he trekked quickly. He could see the man he was running behind slow down to a walking pace, attending to some other order on his agenda. It was then that Brown knew he was wasting his breath. The culprit wasn't in sight. Tech had disappeared in the wind. 2:27 a.m. the same night. Happy New Year! Happy New Year's, baby. Stephanie, Brown's girlfriend of 2 years, kissed him on his cheek. Look at this photo I took of the fireworks downtown. Brown scoped out the images stored in the Canon EOS camera. That's nice, he said simply to pacify her. What? She asked, sensing his lethargy. She knew he didn't share her passion for photography, but he looked like he had just lost his best friend. I let my promotion slip right through my fucking... Struck between words, he wished his frustration could finish speaking for him. Fucking fingers. You're worrying about that tonight? Stephanie asked. Baby, I had him. All of the days to bring your work home with you. Disgusted, she sought simply to get away from him. How many times do I have to tell him the same thing? Hi, Derek. Happy New Year. Stephanie, Lauren's friend, greeted Brown as he entered the living room. Happy New Year's, he said before grabbing a beer, flipping on the couch, and pulling out a cell phone to text his commanding officer. 11:20 a.m. the next day. Detective Brown entered his apartment, clearly still exhausted from the night before. He tossed his keys on the table near the couch. Happy New Year, son, his dad greeted. Hey, Pop, Happy New Year. He patted him on the shoulder, then took the seat next to him. How'd you bring it in? Right in this doggone house, Earl said. Cool, Brown said as he cracked open the refrigerator. Boy, how many times I got to tell you to wash your hands before you get in that goddamn refrigerator? You been out there with them filthy people, touching this, touching that. Don't bring them germs into my house. Brown responded by shutting the fridge and going into the bathroom to wash his hands. He came back in the kitchen, poured himself a glass of juice, and went and sat next to his father. What? Earl asked, sensing his son wanted to talk. I have a confession to make. What's up? He asked in his old, youthful cool. Pops, I seen Tech. What? Yo, Dad, I followed this girl to church. Her and Lena Leslie decided to go bring in a New Year at church, so I followed them. And who'd I end up seeing in the back? And what happened? Brown shook his head in disappointment. I let him get away, Pops. I tried to be discreet, but he pulled out his piece first. They shared a few moments of silence. I should have shot him right on sight, Brown declared, growing further upset at himself. Don't say that, son. That would have just been another brother dead in the streets, he offered in his elder righteousness. Brown smiled at his father as best as he could. That's why I come to you, Pops, he said, embracing him on the shoulder. It's just stupid, he carried on venting. Had they extended the budget for another 2 weeks, we would have kept the wiretaps on her, and we would have been putting the bracelets on at least 15 people tomorrow morning. But no, at the last minute, the state wanted to pull out with their cheap asses. Earl shook his head. empathizing with his son's frustration. He knew his son truly cared about this case. He'd been talking about it for months, and just as it seemed to have gotten cold, God delivered his target right into his hands. He seemed so proud telling the story, sneaking his way backstage at the Lena Leslie show. He took a brave, clever shot and scored. Only weeks earlier, the department had all but given up on the Jason Architect Jordan case, slashing hours and reducing manpower and surveillance. They only maintained the wiretaps on his last known phone and his daughter's phone. Tech showing up at the church meant that he and Lioness had to have been in contact with one another. Closing this whole embarrassing case would have been as simple as intercepting that call and having a SWAT team sit on the church. Instead, Brown was out there with no backup, risking his life to close a case that seemed to be growing on him like a cancer. Earl prayed for his son. 6:51 p.m. the next day. The sun was setting over Atlantic Avenue. Detective Brown pushed back in his seat, trying to look like anything but a cop. A Tribe Called Quest bumping from his trunk certainly helped. Another night of drugs, murder, and mystery was on the loom. He could feel it as he crossed the prominent Brooklyn Bridge into the island of Manhattan. His music was blasting. He was checking a Facebook message on his phone when an incoming call detonated his new Gucci ringtone. "Hi, did someone call me?" "Lioness?" he ascertained. "Who is this?" She did the same. "This is Detective Brown with the 77th Precinct." "Okay." "I was the officer guarding you and Lena," he informed her. "Okay," she said, super cool. "Do you still maintain that you have no knowledge of the whereabouts of Tech?" "Listen, I don't know you. I don't know where Tech is. I don't know shit." "Well, we're finding it very unlikely that you had no clue he was going to be at the church last night." "Listen, man, I don't have nothing more to say. If you have any more questions, you could direct them towards my attorney." His heart sped with nervous energy at the thought of the high-powered attorney that her record label could provide for her. He was relieved that she hung up. His mission was to use his badge and gun to annex himself into Lena Leslie's security outfit. When Leslie and her husband were together in public, it was a security fiasco. They were like the first couple. Brown would use the chaos to his advantage and take it from there. It was only by chance that Brown stumbled upon Lioness, who had no security other than her girls and a chauffeur. So it wasn't hard for him to sell them the idea that Lena Leslie had assigned him to hide in Lioness's shadow and personally guard her. He sold Lioness's real bodyguard the other half of his story, that he was simply there as Lioness's bodyguard and a flash of his badge, and that was that. The Hip Hop Task Force, a federal unit that had been watching Tech's record company for years under the Patriot Act, and all they tried and sentenced him for possession of 2 pounds of hydroponic marijuana a few years back, the agency considered that a humble. They were looking for the big score, taking down Tech, his suppliers, and his money laundering record staff. Detective Brown didn't expect to attain such nearness to the heat in a case that was growing colder for the department. Since most of his ventures regarding the case were performed off-duty, he was sort of doing his own thing. Despite the lack of funding, he was closing in on Tech, who was the centerpiece of 2 open cases. He just needed to find him again. And this time, Brown promised himself that he'd shoot first and ask questions second. 8:02 p.m. the same night. Standing at the wooden podium in front of the room, Lieutenant Hill looked as though he had the same kind of night that Brown did. He coughed softly into his handkerchief and got straight to business. "Where are we with MC Thunder?" Washington spoke for Team Bravo. "We pulled his car over on 159th. He was clean as a whistle." "Pull any fucking car over in the city. What are the chances?" Detective Dawkins asked facetiously. "Hey, Keisha, you want to watch your mouth in my meeting?" Lieutenant Hill asked as he turned to Detective Washington. "All right, Washington, smoke him out. We got a $250,000 grant on this thing. Push it. Do what you got to do. And what about Tech?" Hill asked, peeping back into another foul, then up at Brown. I still hadn't seen hide nor hair of him, Lieutenant, Detective Brown said, hanging his head. Yeah, no shit, you ain't seen him. So you got nothing for me. Well, I have some very credible info from a CI. The tech is definitely still in New York, Brown said for the sake of holding on to the case, which had been steadily losing momentum. No solid progress this week would probably force the department to label it as cold, which would mean that 90% of the funding being delegated would go to more prominent cases. Make sure I get the CI's name before you hit the streets tonight. His name, Lieutenant? Brown probed curiously. Yes, Detective, his name. Is that a problem? Sir, I don't feel comfortable giving out my CI's name, sir. Detective, if you think I'm going to have the commander crawling up my ass on this thing behind some dead-to-the-world crackhead who sold you the story for a hit, you got another thing coming. I need his name and profile, or I'm reassigning you to Team Delta to pull in Keyshawn Crack. Is that understood? Yes, sir. Okay, no cap on overtime this week. How about that? Is that enough to get your lazy asses to do some real investigation around here? Lieutenant Hill looked up around the room to zero resistance. Dismissed, he concluded. Detective Tompkins placed an empathetic hand on Brown's shoulders as he passed him to exit the room. We're gonna wind up catching that motherfucker at a gas station in Ohio, getting a pack of smokes or some shit. Detective Tompkins was wearing a bubble coat and blue jeans as part of his undercover getup. Brown followed behind Tompkins as they headed toward the locker room. Most of the others were hitting the streets. I seen him, Brown said lightly. What? Seen who? Tech? Yes, I saw that motherfucker in church on New Year's Eve. What? Tompkins asked, perplexed. Don't you think that would be intel you might want to share with the lieutenant? That motherfucker pistol whipped me, Ralph. I didn't want to pull out my piece in the church, so he pistol whipped me and got away, he said, shoving his bag he was toting into the locker. I'm going to color that bastard myself. I think you may be getting a little too deep into this case, Derek. Brown simply waved him off. Knowing him well, Tompkins didn't push the issue. Brown was going to do what he was going to do. Just be careful, man, and stop getting into situations without backup. Anyway, Brown moved on. Stephanie wants you to meet a friend tomorrow. She said we can do lunch. Sweet. How's she look? Brown began buttoning the shirt. She's cute. Got a nice little body, he said. She white or black? He asked, knowing Brown's girl was a white girl. She's white. Is she a nurse too? Oh, I forgot. Tompkins interrupted his own question. Tomorrow's probably not a good day, man. I got court tomorrow, and I got an interview. An interview? Brown asked. You really serious about getting a second job? Bro, the holidays hit me like Hurricane Katrina. Fucking Brittany. I bought that little brat the $300 pocketbook she's been hounding me for, and the first thing she says, Daddy, you know they got the matching hats now. Aw, cheer up, Tompkins. Your kids are little gifts from God. Yeah, and why'd they cost so damn much? Brown laughed off the notion of having to answer that. Where's the interview? He asked instead. Brooklyn Tech High School, Tompkins said, placing his firearm in place, finally ready to hit the streets. Tell Steph maybe some other time. 11:14 p.m., the same night. Yo, let me get a dime bag. The kid looked over Detective Brown, who was in his undercover role as James Ratch, which only consisted of wearing a fitted hat halfway off his head, an iPod, and talking and walking a little slicker. The boy shook his head. It's quiet? Brown asked. Yeah, ain't nothing popping over here, B. Brown turned around and walked and looked up Lexington Avenue for the bus. Behind him he heard, Yo, Bricks, sell that nigga a dime bag. He turned around. The boy still only shook his head. The kid approached Brown. You a cop, nigga? Hell no, I ain't no motherfucking cop. His hands remained wedged in the pockets of his hoodie as he raised his arm and pointed behind him. That girl in the building got it, he said. Brown strolled over like a hardened criminal, clinging to his iPod and chewing gum. The girl standing in the lobby didn't bother with a screening process. What you need? She asked. A dime. All right, give me a sec, Scrap. She reached in her navy blue Marmot and pulled out a sandwich bag of smaller baggies. He chuckled to himself. They go through all this trouble to slip up so badly. Yo, let me get your number, too. Nah, I don't give out my phone thing, Scrap. We be out here all day, though. Bet, he said, taking the 2 nickel bags. Not that he gave a damn about a phone number. That was the code for his backup to move in, which they had already did. When he saw Sanchez through the corner of his eye entering the building, Brown backed up and pulled out his Glock. Put your hands on your head. You're under arrest. 8:32 a.m. the next morning. Brown rang the doorbell a second time, wondering what could be taking her so long. He looked back at a small red car parked on the street. Hey, babe, Stephanie said as she opened up. You didn't work last night? She looked at him half asleep, but terribly disappointed nonetheless. No, Derek, yesterday was my day off, she said. Not that you would know that, since you don't call people. Your back was hurting? He asked, looking at the exercise ball in the middle of the living room floor. My personal trainer came over last night, Stephanie advised him. And you had on those? He asked, looking at her sheer leggings. Stop it, she insisted, happy her man was jealous. I want to meet this personal trainer guy, Brown said with his chest out and his body full of air as he stole one of the hors d'oeuvres on the plate on the table. Gladly, she said, leaning in and kissing him on his lips. I'm telling you, baby, he said, beginning to come out of his shirt. Half of these cats who say they're personal trainers are fools that have been locked up north, read all the muscle and fitness magazines that they could, and declared themselves to be certified. No, I went to college with this guy. He's actually branded his own form of training. Whatever. He flopped down and cut the television on. And he used to be a rapper. Whatever, Brown said again, kicking his feet up. He folded his muscle-bound arms into himself and closed his eyes. 7:57 p.m., the same day. I need everything you got on these guys. Brown read the top of the file. New York City Music Cartel. NYCMC? He asked. Yeah, and I don't necessarily have all day. May I ask what your interest is in them? We're taking this case federal. This is the target. Lieutenant Hill went from talking to Brown to addressing the group as a whole as he posted a colorless photo of Jason Jordan on a projector. As you all know, Mr. Jordan is wanted for shooting 3 plainclothes detectives in his projects last winter. Mr. Jordan is also suspected of being a figurehead of a Muslim terrorist organization. We've heard him make several mentions of jihad, and he clearly has some animosity towards the American government. Mr. Jordan is most likely wearing some sort of disguise. He might have cut off his dreadlocks, but I've also heard that he may have kept them dreads and be walking around disguised as a woman. The small congregation laughed off the notion. But seriously, you never know what this guy's capable of. He has a powerful connection in the mosque. From what I understand, he's made a few bucks as a rapper as well. And he doesn't have any major purchases, so the money could be anywhere, including to fund his suspected terrorist organization known as New York City Music Cartel. Target is considered armed and dangerous, so shoot first and we'll fill out all the paperwork later. 32 minutes later. Tompkins slapped on an additional 10 pounds onto the barbell and secured it with a squeeze-lock collar and waited for Officer Carroll to do the opposite side just the same. I mean, seriously, what kind of capability do you think he has? He asked Brown. Who knows? They sponsored their old tour in '08, and they've been selling records independently for nearly a decade. Who knows what kind of capital and assets they might have acquired? Have you checked out his tax returns? Yeah, Brown answered while doing a little stretch. He's filed every year since 1995. Nothing out of the ordinary. Brown lowered his back to the bench and extended his arms. Well, something around here stinks, bro. Lieutenant Hill came up to me and asked me to change my preliminary report to reflect Keyshawn Crack's driver having possessed the weapon, when he knows for a fact that I pulled the weapon off Keyshawn Crack. I also saw one of them HPTF agents pull out a duffel bag full of cocaine. Brown finished his bench press and sat up. Well, what you think that's about? He asked Tompkins, not following his logic. Look, the motherfucker's name is Keyshawn Crack. I mean, what the fuck? Whatever it is, I don't want no part of it, because it's way bigger than us. 2:09 a.m., the same night. Brown was developing a serious distaste for their kind. Entertainers didn't work nearly as hard as him or any of his comrades. He could only imagine the fun they were having in that white Range Rover. He could actually see the car rocking with activity that the foggy tints left to the imagination. Brown took a sip of coffee and pulled out his phone and got caught up on his personal life. Did you see that? Detective Dawkins asked from the passenger seat. No, what? That nasty asshole just tossed a condom out the window. Moments later, MC Thunder emerged from his hotel on wheels. Covering the area of his crotch with his hands, he looked around and Duck walked in front of the car and took a piss. Totally disgusted, Dawkins reached for a door handle. Fuck it, I'm writing him a ticket for taking a leak in public, she said. Brown grabbed her arm. Are you crazy? We're not going to expose ourselves to write him a ticket. We're not doing shit else. We've been watching him for months, and all we know is he drives like a madman and he has 6 girlfriends. Come on, Keisha, relax. Rome wasn't built in a day. You new detectives always want to change the world every night you hit the streets. It's just not like that. MC Thunder finished draining. As he swung around, his diamond chain sparked a gleam from the heavens. He climbed back into his Range Rover and finished enjoying the spectacle of his life, while the joke apparently remained on the law. 8:44 a.m. the next day. Brown walked into the store in the corner of his apartment building and picked up a paper from the newsstand and read the front. Yo, let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese on the roll, he hollered at the Mexican homie behind the counter. The cover story of another hip-hop star behind bars caught Brown's attention. He read the continuation on page 3, perplexed. They're not saying anything about the guns they found on Keyshawn Crack, he said to himself. A cutie with a booty forced Brown's attention. He dropped the paper to the counter and chased his lust out the front door. Damn, he said, falling in line with 2 brothers engaged in staring as well. Oh, what's good, Derek? The short, bald-haired brother asked Brown without taking his eyes off the girl. I'm chillin', bro. How you? I'm wavy, he confirmed his coolness. You know who that is, right? Who? Brown asked, grabbing his crotch with masculine energy. You remember that rapper that shot up them cops in Taft last year? Tech? Brown shouted, finally taking his eyes off the girl. Damn, nigga. He looked at him strange. Yeah, Tech, that's his daughter. Brown took off running, leaving behind his sandwich and the fellas without a thought. You're welcome. Brown saw the blue jean beauty cut the corner. He kicked faster, opening his stride. He caught up with her just in time to see the building that had enveloped her. He ran, getting into the building lobby in time to see the electronic floor tracker on the elevator. She went up to the 11th floor. 3 hours later, Brown decided to use this day off to get caught up on some much-needed rest. Upon waking up, he made himself a ham and cheese sandwich before locking himself in his room. He removed a plastic bag from the back of his closet and emptied its contents onto the bed. Architect's complete body of work was before him. He picked up the disc entitled The New Testament and put it in his radio. Brown was fully aware of the dwindling discretion of hip-hop music. His unit had closed in on MC Thunder by a clue that he'd given him by dry snitching on his record. It was time to see what he could get from Tech. Foxes have holes and the birds have nests, but no place to rest for the man being depressed. This ripping and this running got me stressed and held it in my chest. Excelling nonetheless, boy, I'm fresh. Get money and the woman right to left. Keep the devil by the neck. Keep the ganja up on deck, boy, I'm blessed. Brown jotted notes on his listening before zoning out and letting his head nod. He picked up the disc and looked at it as if expecting his analytical mind to gather some more meaningful data. I don't dance, boy. All you get is 2 steps. Bring on your mans, manhandle him, who next? An empathetic bone seemed to be growing within Brown for the man behind the music. He had to have lived a rough life to be able to write like this, to even have the particular issues on his mind that he did. After listening to a few songs, Brown decided to make a hip-hop afternoon. Digging into his extensive collection of contemporary and old-school music, he started with Nas, his favorite rapper. "Derek, Stephanie is here," Derek's father hollered from the living room. As Brown was gathering himself, his door opened. "What are you doing in here?" he asked Stephanie, who had walked in. "It's nice to see you too, Derek." "I'm sorry, baby. What's up?" He tried to clean up, figuratively and literally. "Whatever." She waved him off and folded her arms into themselves like a sister would. "So I guess you forgot we're supposed to go do lunch today." 1 week later. Brown sat in his car and stared at her with a degree of lust before stepping off into her trail. The youth and swing of her hips made him feel a way that he hadn't felt in years. He wanted to hear her voice. He wanted to smell the inside of her jeans. She had a small Louis Vuitton bag that would have been difficult to be a knockoff, and a pair of horseshoes on the back pockets of her jeans. The girl, whose name he now knew was Gwen, had a figure that Detective Brown somehow equated to the perfect musical note. She stopped at the corner of 127th. Brown pulled out his cell phone and pressed the 1 key until he was connected with his voicemail. "You have no new messages. 1 saved message. To listen to your messages, press 1. Brown stopped his trek of Madison Avenue and pretended to be deeply involved with a conversation. "Oh, word? Get out of here. And then a little bitch gonna call me talking about she need $100 more. He stole a glance of Gwen's bright white smile as he leaned his backside against a parked black Maxima. He unconsciously grabbed at his dick in lust, imagining what she must feel like. When she moved, he moved. When she stopped, he found a way to be busy. After a few times of doing this, he was no closer to tech than when he started, but he was closer to developing a dangerously lustful crush on a teenager that even he was ashamed of. 8 p.m. the same night. "Who can tell me what this Monday is?" Lieutenant Hill asked, looking around the room. Detective Frazier took a shot at it. "January 14th, sir. In the name of our Lord 2010, he said. "Yes, I know it's the 14th, ass breath, but what does that mean?" The congregation of detectives laughed as a group of children would. Lieutenant Hill cut straight to the chase. "This Monday is the start of the Jessica Gang's Founders Week. Now these not-so-little girls hit us with 63 slashings last year. We caught a lot of bad press for that. I have a CI who's informed me that the crew has a quota of 100 slashings this year. So I want a flex squad in Zone A. We're raising the cap on overtime, and we're increasing foot patrol in Zones A, A1, Bravo, and 1 Bravo. Dismissed." Brown stayed put for a moment, brushing his hair and reading a text message on his phone. "We went out last night." He turned around to find Tompkins behind him, smiling. "Yeah? How was it?" "She's really cool, man. We hit it off," Tompkins said, almost glowing. "Oh, yeah?" Brown asked. "So treat me to a beer, motherfucker." "Hey, I'm game," Tompkins said, holding his arms out like a man who just won the lottery. "That's right. You got that side gig at Brooklyn Tech, too," Brown confirmed. "You know it." "Oh, yeah, so you just living a life, huh?" Tompkins playfully patted him on his head of wavy hair. "It's called hard work, Derek. Hard work." 11:41 p.m., the same night. Detective Brown was expecting to see a S40 Volvo in the driveway, but there was a 740 Beamer parked there instead. He shut off his engine and picked up his camera. He snapped pictures of the 2 girls who were with Lioness and her small entourage as they sat and laughed at the unknown in the dining room. There was no sign of Tech. Detective Brown decided in the confines of his own head that he was going to kill Tech on sight. He wasn't going back and forth with him. He wasn't going to risk anything. There was no wins in letting a man of his sort sit in prison. He was just going to find a way to get bigger, stronger, and smarter. He was going to finish Jason Architect Jordan off with a headshot, and that would be that. He would write it up as a struggle to which deadly force was required, but nobody in the force was going to question him putting down a cop shooter. Brown perceived that he would even perhaps be rewarded for his bravery, fearlessness, and diligence in working his case and bringing in the cop shooter to justice. He smiled at the thought as he began listening to the conversation Lioness was having on a cell phone. 1:14 a.m. the same night. Back in NYC, Brown was cruising up 3rd Avenue in East Harlem. He just got back from interviewing a witness as fate pulled him to other police work. The kid couldn't have been any older than 18, wrestling with 2 task force agents like his very freedom depended on it. Brown parked just beside the Toyota Camry that the agents were cruising around in. As Brown slammed his door, one of the agents slammed the youth to the concrete. "Freeze, police!" Brown hollered at the suspect's friend, now emerging from the Maybach he was sitting in awe of the sight. "Yo, what's up?" the boy demanded. "Show me your hands," Brown hollered at who he could now identify as MC Thunder. "Yo, he ain't got to do my man like that, though," MC Thunder said. "Shut the fuck up," Brown said, taking his arm and wrapping it around. "Yo, what's up, man? We ain't do shit." "Oh," Brown said, feeling the presence of cold steel strapped in his waistline. "What's this? Shit for brains." He pulled out the government-issued P-89. 8:03 a.m. the next morning. "What?" Derek demanded in a near-threatening tone. Stephanie looked at him as she couldn't believe he had a question. "Derek, when was the last time you picked up your phone and called me? What, 2 or 3 days? You're either screwing someone else or you're too wrapped up in this case that you don't need a girlfriend anyway. So I have to move on." 7 hours later. Brown was doing a drive-in for a change. Dawkins could tell by the lack of conversation that he wasn't having the best of days. As they approached the yellow light and an unmarked car, Brown activated the sirens to pull over the car in front of them. 2 blocks later, Brown stepped out of the car like a common thug, chest and gun out. There was nothing professional or courteous in his face, only anger and vengeance. "Yo, man, what the fuck it took you so long to pull over for?" The bite-sized Mexican brother put his hands up out of fear. "I didn't know it's for me," he said. "Get out of the car," Brown demanded with his gun, tripping off his power and the nervousness of the driver. "I didn't know nothing, man." "Don't call me man, motherfucker," Brown said as he began to frisk him. "You got any weapons or anything sharp that's gonna poke me?" "No, man, I told you, I don't have anything," the man said, turning around. Brown pushed him. He pounded his skull on the side with his fist. He slammed him to the ground and placed him under arrest. 10:40 p.m., the same night. The binoculars were, as the kids would say, extra. As much a part of his act as his badge and gun. He could see fine without them, although getting a closer look at Gwen was certainly among the thrills for his day. He no longer struggled with resisting his lust. He watched her denim groove to her teenage switch, taking time to appreciate her tough leather boots as she made her way up the block like a rhyme. With the slight refocus of the scope, he could see Gwen shaking her butt to whatever music she was playing in her head as she talked with her friend. Brown initially tried to struggle against his own sinful soul. Any warm-blooded man was still at least a stare or two, but he allowed his eyes to get comfortable. He allowed his eyes to wander. As his wandering eyes attempted his weak will, soon after, his body submitted. He could feel his penis thickening against his leg. As Gwen continued to shake playfully, He continued to grow erect. He dropped his binoculars and sit back, still fighting himself, albeit in a losing effort. He unzipped his pants and gave himself a massage. The same second that he ejaculated was the same second that his shame became evident to him. He felt like a disgusting piece of a man. He shoved his nasty right hand into his pocket, and the word went forth. 1 week later, Brown picked up the newspaper in disbelief. 52. The big bold number was printed on the cover with a picture taken from a surveillance camera depicting one of the more gruesome of the city's slashings. Those little bitches, he said as he opened up and read. The phone in his holster began to vibrate. Brown speaking, he answered the call. Hey, Derek, I know it's your day off, but we need you to come in today. We got hit with 52 slashings last night. 2 of them resulted in deaths. Yeah, I'm looking at the paper right now. He looked into his Seiko watch dial. All right, give me 2 hours. I'll be there. 2 hours later. Detective Brown, a moment with you? Lieutenant Hill pulled Brown aside as soon as he walked in. I was looking in your file from your bus last night, and I noticed in your partner's report that she stated that she found the cocaine on MC Thunder. Yeah, Brown said, failing to see the point. That's correct. Listen, I have some friends, some very powerful friends, who have a vested interest in this MC Thunder guy. You understand what I mean when I say vested interest? Lieutenant, I was halfway done with my MBA when I joined the force. Brown said, slightly offended. Of course I know what vested interest means. Yet, I still fail to see your point. My friends, my very powerful friends, would like very kindly if your report could reflect that dope to be in possession of a Mr. Davis's passenger. The lieutenant looked back at the file. A one Barry Thompson, as opposed to Mr. Davis, better known as MC Thunder. 4:42 p.m. the next day. Dawkins pulled their Crown Vic over sharply, and her and Brown jumped out even sharper. Yo, what y'all doing? Brown asked the girls, who were trying their best to ignore him. From their backs, he heard, none of your business, followed by chuckles. What? Come here, he demanded. So y'all Jessica sisters, he asked, examining the abundance of sky blue apparel between them. No, we're not Jessica, one of them responded. Take your hands out your pocket, Dawkins instructed the mocha-skinned shorty, who was digging in her pants. Whatever, the girls responded. Dawkins grabbed her by her wrist and rubbed her hands from her pocket. Yo, what's your problem? Dawkins asked. I'm trying to get home. What the fuck is your problem? For all the tough talk, she showed little to no resistance when Brown snatched the other arm. Her imbalance and his strength caused her to stumble to the concrete. Yo, that's police brutality. Stay back, Detective Dawkins yelled, placing her hand on her weapon. One of the other girls pulled out a cell phone and began recording Brown as he cuffed the girl on the ground. Stop resisting. I'm not fucking resisting, the girl yelled from the floor with her hands restrained behind her back. Stand up, he instructed, doing so by pushing up through her back. Ah, she yelled. Shut up. I don't see why you couldn't just stop and speak like a normal human being. He opened the car door. I don't see how you people expect to live long if the only way you can learn anything is by force. The next day, Detective Tompkins looked like he'd lost 10 pounds. He was wearing a thin beige robe with a coffee mug in one hand and a cigarette in the other. How many they do yesterday? He asked before he hucked spit into the tissue in his hand. 42. Brown informed him, already know that he was referring to the Jessica gang. Those little bitches, Tompkins said, shaking his head. He raised his remote control and turned on the television. You want to make a couple of extra dollars? He asked before lighting a cigarette. You're smoking while you're sick? Brown asked in vain as Tompkins dragged away. What I gotta do now? Brown asked. Filling for me tomorrow at my second job at the high school, he said before blowing a steady stream of smoke. You got to be there at 10 and you'll stay at 3. It's an easy $100. Yeah, I could do that. I got off tomorrow too. So it's all good, Brown said as he kicked back. Tompkins turned his attention toward the television. After nearly a minute of flipping through the useless channels, he turned back to Brown. And he signed a tech? Man, that motherfucker's like a ghost, Brown said. I'm on to his daughter, though. Tompkins chuckled, unimpressed. We sat on his daughter for nearly a year when we were trying to get him for marijuana. I don't think he has much of a relationship with either of them. Yeah, well, I'm going to stay on her anyway. You know, keep watching her, see what transpires. Tompkins moved right along. Bro, if you're going to fill in for me, you have to show up on time. I know you. The principal is no joke. Tough old bitch named Miss Harriet Ford. No problem. I'm not kidding, Derek. Be there before 10. Don't fuck my shit up, Tompkins said. I got this, Brown assured him. 10:11 a.m. the next day. Hi, I'm looking for Miss Harriet Ford, Brown said as he approached the uniformed officer sitting a few feet from the main entrance. The man pointed to the woman on his left. Well, you found her. What can I do for you? The woman in the emerald and white suit asked. I'm here to fill in for Detective Tompkins. She looked into a wristwatch. You're late, she said. Sparing her the bullshit, Brown simply shrugged his shoulders as opposed to giving her a story. Follow me, she said. They strolled to the school's east wing and stopped in front of a student desk situated in front of the staircase. This is your station. Make sure no students come in or go out of that door. Report to the playground at 11:45, which is the first lunch period. At 12:15, be outside for dismissal. No problem. 5 hours later. It was quite the task for Brown as he tried to keep his eyes from focusing on a pretty young ass scattered about. The kids crawled out from every which way to the tune of the end of another long day. A member of the faculty came running up to Brown. Officer, there's a fight outside. Brown twisted the cap back on his soda and rushed out behind the assistant principal. Oh, God, they're going to beat him to death. Brown sprinted over like a $50,000 a year superhero. Freeze! Police! Gwen Sessoms, 500 miles. They're liable to be reading the time off your wristwatch, let alone your emails. Jason Architect Jordan. January 21st, 2010. Even at the tender age of 15, young Gwen Sessoms' eyes had already hardened to the reality of life, so it wasn't difficult for her to digest one of her schoolmates getting his head pounded between the sole of Timberlands and the gravel. An officer had to taser the perpetrators off him, and school security rushed in along with arriving police. She didn't know why they were fighting or who they were. Just another Thursday in Brooklyn and another fight in a war zone of a city. As the situation was being suppressed, Gwen gave one last look, certain that she'd seen the wavy hair, tall, fair-skinned detective before. Trekking in her rain boots through the slush of Crown Heights, Gwen made her way to the 4 train. She flashed the hood off a Michael Kors coat and noticed Cornell creeping up behind her. What's up, Gwen? He asked, walking nearly sideways to keep his sagging pants from dropping to the ground. Yo, she acknowledged in all her cool. You seen that shit? He asked, referring to the chaos outside. Yeah, niggas be wildin'. She swiped the student Metro card through the turnstile. The train was waiting. The conductor was hanging out of the window looking up and down the platform as if they weren't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. They boarded, surrounded by their fellow classmates and general public. Yo, the rest of the week is going to be crazy, Cornell said, posting his bag to the door opposite the one they just entered. What you mean? Gwen gripped a pole in the middle of the crowded train with a napkin to protect her clean, manicured hands. Them Jessica chicks been going in, over 50 slashings in one day. This city is crazy, yo, she said, not looking to incriminate herself. As the 4 train pulled into the last stop in Brooklyn, Gwen figured she'd duck out of the convo with Corny Cornell by tuning into her BlackBerry. Although there was no service in the filthy tunnels, she would find anything better to do than talk to him. At 125th Street, Gwen transferred to the downtown local train, and 2 stops later, there she was, in the heart of the bullshit. The east side of Harlem still had that life and death energy in the air. The sisters had things on another level over the past year. There were more girls dropping out of school and pledging the sets. Girls who didn't see anything holistically, they were just there for the drama and blood. There were more and more beefs between sets, resulting in sisters getting killed, having their natural faces lacerated for life, or arrested. And they were armed to the teeth. 2 Tech 9s, a military-grade 32-round Uzi, 5 9mm, 3 AK-47s, thanks to box cutter Keisha's brother, who had recently returned from Iraq, and countless handguns. Their arsenal wasn't just limited to firearms either. They had axes, daggers, machetes, taser guns, and bats. Sisters were everywhere on the avenue, in front of the building, in the lobby. When Gwen got off the elevator on the 17th floor, there were more sisters posted at the terrace. "Yo," Gwen greeted. "Yo," the lookout acknowledged. Standing right in the middle of the hallway smoking a blunt was Amanda. As soon as she saw Gwen, she handed a piece of paper, folded into herself many times. On the paper, there were names of 6 girls that Gwen was overseeing tomorrow, and the razor blades that they would use to complete their assignments. 7:48 p.m., the same night. Gwen warmed up the baked chicken and string beans from the other night. As she took a seat at the kitchen table, her cell phone rang. She checked the caller ID. It was Candace. "What's up, Blue? What you doing?" Candace asked. "Yo, you better fall back greeting me like that. You can't piece me up like that till you get your stripes back." "Yeah, but it's only you," Candace reasoned. "Plus, I'm going to have my stripes back by tomorrow anyway." Gwen knew Candace didn't understand her logic, at least not at any meaningful level. Gwen always felt like Candace was a half-stepper, one who tried to play both sides of the field. Gwen made it a point to let Candace know that this family was for life. Blood in, blood out. Gwen wasn't sure that Candace had that in her, and in her own secret way, she wished that Candace was going to be informing her that she wouldn't be seeing her tomorrow night. "How many we at right now?" Candace asked. "Monday was 52, Tuesday 25, Gwen said. "It was only 42 yesterday," Candace said. "And 42 today. That's 77 plus 84, 161, Gwen calculated quickly. 200 minus 161. We got to do 39 in 2 days. "That's nothing," Candace said confidently. "So where you want us to meet you at tomorrow night?" "Let's meet in zone 3. 1 up." "Bet," Candace said. "Let the girls know." "Bet. You ain't seen Aisha yet?" Candace asked out of the blue, trying to carry on the conversation. "Nah," Gwen said, heartening her everything. "But New York is small. I'ma run into her sooner or later." The tone of an incoming call rang. She checked the display screen. "Mommy." "Yo, Blue. I mean Candace," Gwen corrected herself. "I gotta go. That's my mom's." "All right, see you tomorrow. By this time tomorrow, I will be Blue again." "Yeah, all right, we'll see." Gwen switched over to the next line. "Hi, Mommy." "Hey, what's up?" Bernadette asked. "Nothing. Sitting up here doing some homework," she said, cutting the volume of the television down. "Good. How was school?" "It was good. I got a chemistry test on Friday I need to study for, so I'm just focusing on that." The truth of the matter was Gwen did very little, if any, studying at all. She did her homework on the train and the cafeteria in the morning. Things just came naturally to her. "How was work?" she asked her mother. "Oh, it was good. I finally finished up on those reports I've been working on all week." A few minutes of idle chit-chat with Mom, a shower, and a little bit of reading, and it was off to bed. Her sister, an acting guardian, Hollis, didn't get off work till around 10 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Gwen was home alone. But it didn't matter in La La Land. She took care of what she had to take care of and went to bed. The next day, like Jay-Z's lady is beyond saying, supporting your woman goes beyond paying. Watching me, ballers like LeBron playing. As usual, Gwen employed a hip-hop start to her day. She was singing along to Fabulous as she cleaned the small living quarters in the one-bedroom apartment. She knew cleanliness was next to godliness. Her outfit for the day was laid out across the futon bed. A forest green V-neck and Banana Republic brown cargo pants and her beef and broccoli high-rise boots. Shea buttered up, today's accessory, a cashmere beret, and a new case for a BlackBerry with several waiting messages. For breakfast, she had a cinnamon raisin bagel, a cup of orange juice, and 2 Flintstone vitamins. She got a playlist together and corrected the drop of her pants over her boots while she waited for the elevator and was off to the world. 10:09 a.m. the same day. And they're going after Gaddafi and Libya next. Mr. Sharif cut James off from reinforcing his point. Brother Gaddafi was proposing to have money attached to gold. Gaddafi has the largest amount of gold in the world, only second to China. Social studies with Mr. Sharif was usually the academic highlight of Gwen's day. The 90 minutes that she sat in the front row of his class was usually the most mentally challenging. As usual, they were off topic. They were supposed to be discussing the uprising against President Mubarak in Egypt, but now they were discussing global American imperialism. This would totally destroy the economies in the West. This is the same thing that Saddam Hussein was posing at the time of his death. That's what the government of this country does to people who oppose its imperialistic hand. They kill them. Nah, they not killing my son Gaddafi. Their military arsenal is crazy, James attested. Boy, America ain't no joke. And we not just talking about America. They'll send NATO forces and bomb that nation back to the Stone Age. Gwen's mind had began to wander elsewhere. Tonight was going to test the blood pumping through her heart. She couldn't believe the sisters had come all the way out like they did. 161 faces needed stitches. One girl from Johnson Projects required 183 stitches. A 14-year-old girl was stabbed in her chest trying to resist. Gwen was past wishing this wasn't her life. She was knee-deep in the game. She was only thankful that this was her 3rd year down with the sisters. Therefore, she wasn't required to spill any blood. Only to sort of manage a group of sisters looking to attain their Jessica stripes. It was on tonight. 6:41 p.m. the same night. Gwen had to toughen and tighten everything when she was around them. She had to be ready to see, hear, and feel some crazy shit while remaining cool and firm. Gwen wore black Nautica jeans, a black RL long sleeve. Her baby blue blood-stained bandana was in her back left pocket. This was only family, besides her mother and late brother, that she cared to claim. The sisters rode out. They resembled a small army. Jaliqua, the Manhattanville True Blue, walked up to Gwen like a general checking in for the battle plans. Who you got, Gwen? Peach, Candace, Laura, and Madeline, Gwen answered. Make sure that bitch Candace don't break, Jaliqua instructed. All right, move out. 9:37 p.m., the same night. They were rolling slow. Lorna, the 23-year-old pledge from the Lower East Side, was whipping the wheel. Sheik Luch's voice was bleeding from the stereo, adding to the ferociousness of the night. East Harlem was black and brown and Spanish, camouflaged with Satan's tricks under the moonlight to manifest this night. Hey, yo, y'all ready? Gwen asked with as much bass in her voice as nature would allow. Nobody said anything. Their ghostly gazes and ghostly grills gave a guess as their willingness to go. Indeed, it was time. Lorna pulled over. Yo, hand me my pocketbook, she said to her fellow pledgers in the back seat. Candace handed her her fake Louis bag, squished between her ass and the seat. Gwen noticed Candace give Lorna a strange look while doing so. Ever ready for anything around the sisters, Gwen reached out and grabbed Lorna's hand, which was now submerged in the plethora of her bag. Fuck y'all doing? She demanded. Girl, if you don't relax, Lorna snapped her hand back to herself. Like the Terminator's daughter or some shit, she attested, not about to allow some 15-year-old the right to tell her how to move. It was bad enough she was the OG on the mission, in charge of watching over them. This how we been getting through them blow sessions, Lorna explained, popping open the pocket mirror in her palm. Gwen chilled out physically, only to feel the energy that fueled her body now shift into her mind. By getting high? She asked. Yo, G, they had us in the blows cut for over 2 hours. 2 hours, B, Peach said, as if Gwen was supposed to give a fuck. Fuck out of here, y'all some silly hoochies. I took blows. Me and my Sans took blows. We wasn't getting high. The moment she said this, she realized the falsehood in the testament, as she exchanged regretful eyes with the inebriated Candace, who was the exception to her testament. Gwen pointed 2 thumbs down. That whole situation is going this way, she said. Hurry the fuck up. If y'all gonna do that shit, I'ma take the train home. Y'all bitches done lost y'all minds. Lorna looked at her side at Gwen as if to say, I may be getting high, but I ain't gonna be too many more bitches up in here. After she took a sniff, Lorna passed the makeshift plate of coke to Candace, who took her go. Their brains went into superdrive. The shutting of the car doors was a thrill. They were rolling 4 deep, but being backed by thousands put the gangster in their steps. Blacked out, they went forth. The weather was as nasty and erratic as the little lady's endeavors. Gwen made her way up the street as if to appear not to be walking with the pack. Therefore, once the girl struck, she could take off running while the mission went on. They were deviously detailing most of their doings. A tall girl in a navy blue parka with brown corduroy patches approached. Gwen knew they were going in for her. In her heart, she only wished that whichever one of them was going to use an easy opportunity to go first didn't hurt the girl too much. Yo, what Jessica stand for? Gwen heard Lorna demand of the clueless girl. What? She asked. Lorna took hold of the back of the girl's head with a grip of a grown man. Johnson, she said, as she met the girl's now exposed face with a razor. Gwen turned around to bear witness as she had pledged and committed under oath to do. East River, the second slash came through a holler and a partial block with blood-stained hands. Lorna fastened her lock on the girl's hair. Isaacs, Clinton. By then, the victim had given up the fight, surrendering her will. And Abraham Lincoln, Lorna concluded. 4 minutes later. There you go. Vic that bitch right there, Pete said to Candace, who had passed up 2 previously perfect opportunities, as if expecting to run into a problem with the menacing mob walking down the street. The petite Asian woman seemed to be quite ready. She brandished her guard as Candace brandished her weapon. Candace missed her first strike, cutting nothing but the air with her overplayed drama in the woman's weave. Appalled that this woman dared to make her look bad in front of her sisters, Candace reached for the Smith & Wesson dagger in her pocketbook. Whatever was fueling her had already possessed her, and therefore there was no second thought, just a stab and a second stab. As with any animal being hunted down, the lady tried to get away, only to be grabbed by the young killer who brought the knife over her shoulder and through her chest. The struggle gave way to the silence of death. The next day. Jesus forgives again and again, Pastor Redden proclaimed, making his way along the stage of the emerging megachurch. Gwen sat in between her mother and Lucretia, with her nephew Terrell seated on her lap. Suddenly, Terrell ripped the Holy Bible out of Gwen's hand and threw it to the ground. What's wrong with you, little boy? Gwen asked. She picked up the good book before slapping him on his wrist. The punishment inflicted turned out to be more of her own as she succeeded in slapping his juice out of her right hand and onto her dress. Give him here, Lucretia said, her tone respectful of the sermon up front. I swear, he do the idea terrible too, every bit of justice, Gwen testified as she brushed off her Aldo piece. She relaxed and re-engaged in listening to the miracles of Christ. She certainly felt in need of forgiveness and the mercy that the preacher was preaching of. She still couldn't believe that Candace, little Candace, had taken someone's life. How great of a transgression. Gwen had done some crazy things in the name of the set that she came to regret. Mainly the 2 faces she slashed to earn and keep her stripes. Stripes meant getting into all the parties, protection anywhere she went, popularity. It meant being a part of something bigger than herself. Albeit, all that the sisterhood shit that they pumped up was dead. There was no sisterhood. Sisters were primarily fighting between themselves. Even Gwen, she still had unsettled beef with a sister she beat down a few years ago. And Aisha wasn't the type to just let things go. Gwen knew her little ghetto, conniving ass was crawling somewhere around Harlem looking for unjust revenge. Let us all bow our heads and pray, Pastor Redden instructed as the organ fostered the mood. This was usually the time when Gwen would peep around and try to guess what the other people were praying for, or if they were praying at all. Today, she was committed to communicating with God. She bowed her head with formality. What's up, God? It's your girl G. Yo, God, on some real, I'm sorry for the part I played in what happened last night. She searched for the words to explain herself to a God thoroughly acquainted with her. God, I just ask, if this is not for me, please show me a way out. Please show me a better way to bond with my family and be protected than this. Gwen usually ran out of words in her prayer way before the pastor resumed service, but today, her heart was still open to God, and she still clearly had need of him. And please, God, let my brother know that I love him and that I miss him, and please have mercy on his soul. And God, please watch over my father. He can be selfish sometimes. That's my father, and I love him. I love you, and I thank you for my life. Amen. After church, the ladies and babies enjoyed brunch at a restaurant on Central Park West. Gwen and her mom had a long conversation about the college application process, how she needed to get involved with more extracurricular activities to spruce up her resume. Bernadette even suggested a sport. She advocated an 11 o'clock bedtime to be followed even in her absence. Gwen found it to advantage that Lucretia was present, as she was serving as some sort of liaison between her mother's old, outdated ways and Gwen's young vision of the future. Bernadette wanted Gwen to pursue her niche for law and remain a virgin until she was married. Gwen wanted to be a writer and have all the fun she could with her days under the sun. Either way, her mom was showing an extraordinary effort to put a smile on Gwen's face that seemed to be absent all her childhood. She allowed Gwen to stay with her sister last year. Hollis lived closer to Gwen's school, and Hollis was the sister that Gwen never got to enjoy. Hollis was ambitious, well-read, and gorgeous, and all in her own right, which seemed to have parallel with Gwen's same attributes in a fascinating manner. Where Hollis wanted to change the world with education, Gwen wanted to change the very same things with the sword, not the pen. Where Hollis indulged in the Holy Quran, Gwen used Sun Tzu. Where Hollis walked, the guys would stop and their jaws would drop and stare as if they were in love. Where Gwen walked, the fellas followed, falling over themselves to say something, anything, to the broad hip, round booty cutie. Lucretia, as if representing the spirit of her late husband, Gwen's brother, mediated an agreement. Gwen would put her every effort into bringing her grade point average up to be in position to get into the best college possible. She would stay from her old neighborhood in Harlem. They all agreed at the tail end of the mother-daughter covenant that they would go to church together at least twice per month. And the word went forth. 7:07 p.m., the same night. Y'all would have loved to be in a party like that. Me and Dominique would have killed it. The Blood Sisters were sitting on the erected futon bed watching House Party 1 on DVD. Hollis was popping seedless grapes in her mouth, her long, honey-coated legs folded onto themselves, relaxing on her only day off from work in 2 weeks. Those haircuts are back in style now, she said. For real though, my boy Nashawn got his hair cut like that, Gwen said. You know what else the girls are rocking too? That Cyndi Lauper cut, Hollis said. Who is Cyndi Lauper? Time After Time? Hollis said. Gwen shook her head, unfamiliar with her sister's logic. Chill, you gotta YouTube that joint. That's a classic. She got up and checked on the cheese fries she was warming up. Watching movies on Sunday evenings had become sort of a household ritual. I got a picture back there with Daddy with a flat top, Hollis said from the kitchen. The mention of her father prompted Gwen to go to her computer. Tech had been communicating with Gwen via email to set up in-person meetings. Her father was ever watchful of those who were watching him. He never spoke on phones. They always met at some off-the-radar spot, and he always seemed to emerge from the earth around them. Gwen came to look forward to their rendezvous. She was attracted to the other side of the law, and her father embodied that. Gwen went to Google and immediately noticed a message with the subject line reading Little E, and she knew immediately that that was her dad. Only he would be emailing her using that name, the E in reference to her grandmother Ella. Hello, this is Daniel from 116th Street. We're going to meet up to celebrate our brother's birthday. Brother is getting so big. I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. See you there. Hollis made it back to the living room with a plate full of munchies. Gwen checked the time. It was 7:15. If she was going to make the meeting, she was going to have to leave ASAP. As instructed by her father, she said nothing to Hollis, as the authorities had been watching and waiting for Tech to show up. Yo, Candace need me to help her out with something real quick. All right, don't be out all night, Gwen, Hollis said in her semi-parental mode. I won't, Gwen assured, securing her coat. Always the one who could create the detailed fairy tale on the spot. Gwen added, Candace just need my help with a school project she's working on. 9:11 p.m., the same night. She was happy to see her dad starting to look like his old self again. His shoulders were bulging through his black coat, and he had gotten most of his size back. Tech displayed none of the emblems of his rank. No fancy watch, no bright, handsome smile, and his hair was tucked beneath a tightly drawn hood. Peace, he greeted, sitting his duffel bag on the park bench beside him. Gwen met his approaching face with a kiss on the cheek. Daniel Bernhardt, Daddy? He shrugged his shoulders. It was the first thing that came to mind. With those hip-hop task force motherfuckers looking at me, they're liable to be reading the time off your wristwatch, let alone your emails. I actually think there may be an officer following me, Gwen informed him. What you mean? I see this dude more times than I probably should have. I guess he works at my school, she added, truly puzzled herself. What you mean you guess he work at your school? Either he do or he don't. Well, the first time I saw him at the store on 110th Street. What the fuck you still doing around here? Tech demanded with that fiery temper of his. Another fairy tale materialized from her complex mind. I don't be going around here. I was just picking up something from one of my friends. Don't give me that shit. Keep your little ass from around here. I'm not playing with you. Yeah, she submitted. What'd he look like? Who, Daddy? The cop, Tech said. He a little taller than you, light skinned? I don't know. All right, he said, recording the info mentally. What's up with your sister, he asked, moving along. She good, I guess. She ain't doing nothing but working. She don't even go out on the weekends, Gwen said, slightly agitated at the thought. I fail to see the point. Tech acknowledged, staring off into Sheridan Avenue with thought. Gwen sat back with him, relaxing during their brief respite from winter's rush. Your sister's a very creative, very scholarly young woman. He paused for a second, then resumed. She needs time. She takes time to study and to see what she has to see so she can do what she's compelled to do. Gwen thought, right before turning her mind to figure if her father would go that deep to defend her. But she did understand. Hollis was a wealth of information, and she had the ability to focus like a laser. That couldn't be in vain. Gwen decided that she needed to study her sister more. You still think the police are watching her? She asked her father. I know they are, he said with confidence. I seen the car sitting on your block the last time I was over there. I seen the same car waiting outside of Margot's a few days ago. His words were a reminder of the severity at hand. This was his life. If they caught him, he was more than likely to go to jail for the rest of his life, especially now that Russell was dead behind all of this. They don't think I fuck with you, though, so they ain't following you. At least not that I can see, he added. Gwen acknowledged in her own way, keeping her thoughts private. Thunder from somewhere deep off in the sky came roaring too, as if some great hollow mass was cracking in the sky. Gwen looked up and caught a glimpse of the approaching lightning. They both understood that Allah had decreed this conversation to be cut short. Tech couldn't afford to get wet because it would take days for him to dry. Gwen couldn't afford to get wet because she was just too cute for that. So next time, we meet up at Kennedy Fried Chicken on 169th, all right? All right, Gwen said. I love you. I love you too, she said, finally dropping the tightness in her heart, following those 3 words. And the word went forth. The next day. The camaraderie of the sisterhood on this day made all the bullshit of pledging worth it. Sister after sister packed into the basketball court, dubbed as Kingdom, an outright show of force. There was a sea of baby blue on 110th and 5th, in the Martin Luther King housing projects. It was freezing outside, feeling more like February or two, but sisters still found a way to style their colors. Gwen was wearing a pair of tight blue True Religion jeans, a baby blue coat she got from Hollister, and a blue and white 95 Air Max. Amanda had on a blue Sherlin and a matching military-inspired hat. Nazia had on a triple blue Coogee with blue flags hanging from everywhere, her back pockets, wrists, even one around her neck. There had to be hundreds of sisters present, but Gwen had been scanning for minutes and still hadn't spotted the one sister she was most interested in tracking, Aisha. Aisha couldn't digest losing to Gwen in a one-on-one fight and had spread the word to several sisters that she was going to catch Gwen with her guard down. With her vision, Gwen wasn't the one to overlook much. Aisha was nowhere around. The pledges took center stage. This was the last time they'd ever be referred to as pledges, as it was the final stage of their 1,000-mile journey from a pledge to a Jessica sister. By design, the ceremony was super swift. Each set star presented its new sister with their flag before they were embraced by the other 6 true blues of the set, and they were home. Contrary to the crew name, the sets were no longer represented by housing projects. There were sisters from all over Harlem. Sisters flagged Bronx sets and even 4 Brooklyn chapters. The proceedings took a little over a half an hour. What? Candace asked, smiling, like she hit the lotto. She did a celebratory gangster 2-step before dapping up Gwen, now as her equal sister. What up, Blue? Gwen asked, acknowledging Candace. How you feel? You already know. She grinned as Gwen didn't think she'd be able to. I'm loving it, she said, crimping her fingers to flash the Madison Avenue M set. Candace's aura was exceedingly unattractive to Gwen. She almost could puke. She had taken an innocent person's life, and here she was, delighting in the fact that she was being accepted among these disloyal, ugly-spirited bitches again. Candace leaned in. Yo, G, this chick trying to rub your name in the dirt. What? Gwen asked, as if poised to attack. Show me the bitch, her fist said, already not trusting in anything that came out of Candace's mouth. That bitch Aisha, she affirmed, which was no surprise to Gwen. We seen her on 132nd earlier. Gwen waved it off and looked away, uninterested. This was one of those who's gonna swing first beefs. What was she gonna do? Worry about it? Yo, Blue, that bitch disrespected your brother. I ain't gonna repeat what she said, but that bitch definitely stepped out of bounds. What? What she said? Gwen began to perspire beneath her Brit sweater. She suddenly changed to where that bitch at mode. Candace shook her head to the negative. She wouldn't dare to repeat. Least Gwen should see it fit to kill a messenger. Yes, she had her stripes back, and under the sisterhood laws, they were equals, but Candace knew full well what Gwen was capable of on a physical level. She didn't let it come out often, but when it did, it was something to take caution of. It was completely on. Completely. It didn't matter where she saw her or when. Aisha's ass was hers. Especially knowing that Aisha was on the other side of town with the same sentiments. Never the one for talking about what she was going to do, Gwen said nothing. Only a vague shake of her head and the intent behind her face spoke. Some bitches just got to learn the hard way. Valentine's Day, 2010. Gwen Sessoms, please come down to the main office. Gwen Sessoms. Gwen checked the time on her BlackBerry and saw that there were only 6 more minutes remaining in this period until PM homeroom. She figured the bell would ring before she made it back to class, and so she gathered all her things. Black and red hunter boots, red Bottega Veneta sweater, black Guess jeans, and a black and red Gucci belt with a hint of green. She made Valentine's Day look good. She didn't have an official Valentine, but she took that to mean simply that none of these boys were on her level. She stepped into the main office and walked over to Martha, who she knew had made the announcement. She could see a large rectangular box with a pink ribbon around it. Gwen had given up on being an optimist many moons ago, but she certainly hoped and wished that the box was for her. Martha smiled and extended it to her. Her heart became warm. She opened up the card attached to the front. From the man whose face looks just like yours and who loves you times 1 billion. She smiled. Her dad had gotten 1 billion points for this, as it was completely unexpected and thoughtful. Open it up, the no-life-having, nosy administrator requested. Gwen opened up the box and found a dozen pink roses and a small vase. She smiled, truly touched. No sooner had Gwen walked out of the main office was her piece under assault. A group of seniors walked by, checking her out. She probably sent them shits to herself. One of them said, just loud enough for Gwen to hear. Gwen was so appalled that she didn't know how to respond. She kept walking, looking to avoid potential problems until she looked back and saw the trio looking back at her laughing. Bitch, who the fuck you think you talking to? She yelled, ignited. What, my nigga? What's poppin'? Perhaps Gwen had felt like she had been getting pushed around too much, and it was time for her to do some pushing. Perhaps she had outright lost her mind for a moment. Perhaps any and all physical encounters meant a fight to victory or death to young Miss Sessoms. But sure as the sky was blue, that she grabbed the glass vase from the flower box and broke it boldly over the approaching girl's head. Martha, Mr. Applewhite, and others fled from the main office a few feet away. Ah! Gwen's victim screamed, tending to her bleeding face. That's right, bitch, Gwen hollered, flashing her fist at the remaining duo who wanted no part of her. Martha suppressed Gwen by her arms. Stop it! Have you lost your mind? 4:59 p.m., the same day. Gwen checked the mailbox as she waited at the elevator. All of the days to get my PSAT scores back, she thought, looking at the envelope. God and his mysterious ways. She opened up the envelope in search of the turning point of her day from shitty to manageable. She skimmed through the text and looked for the first number she could see. 1450. She found herself in a state of confusion. Her goal was to at least break 1700. But she was confident that she had scored somewhere at least in the 1800 range. She looked up through the front door of the building, and the day somehow seemed to slow down. Her aspirations of going to college seemed to be rapidly departing her world. When she got inside, she sat in silence for a moment. God wasn't around. She was sure of that. She was all alone. She wondered how God could be absent when she went to church on Sunday and prayed. Or could it be that he didn't approve of her actions? Could this be justice? How could she make it right if it was? She just wanted to stop the proverbial bleeding. Life like this wasn't worth living. She was faint of heart, unsettled, and indecisive. The vibration of her phone in her pocket vibrated her very heart. She hoped it was anyone but her mother. She looked down at the name on the caller ID. Mommy. She answered, figuring it'd be better to go ahead and get it over with. Hello. Have you lost your damn mind? Bernadette screamed into the phone. The hollowness of her background suggested that she was in a remote office somewhere at her job. Hello, she yelled as Gwen failed to respond. Yes, Gwen said lightly. You don't have nothing to say for yourself, huh? I know you're not trying to hear it. Shut up. I'm not trying to hear it. Your principal called me and told me you've been expelled. Expelled? The reality hit Gwen straight in the chest. Yes, that girl needed 12 stitches. You know you bring your ass home, right? Ma, shut up, her ever-fiery mother insisted. I gave you a chance, and you messed that up. Gwen wished she could at least throw a good PSAT score at her mother. But if she told her the truth of that matter, she'd probably be in more trouble. Did Hollis change your phone number? Bernadette asked. Yes. Give it to me. Hold on. Gwen accessed her electronic phone book and retrieved her sister's number. 646-555-3249. As her consciousness suggested, she slipped her mother the incorrect last digit. She figured doing this and cutting off her phone for the rest of the day would buy her some time. When she got off the phone, more suppressing silence resumed. On the verge of crying and self-pity, Gwen decided to laugh at herself instead. She threw her back to the futon and blinked away her tears. You be bugging, yo, she said to herself, shaking her head. She breathed deeply and wondered if perhaps God had not forsaken her, if this was somehow the sins of her father living themselves out through her. This is something his crazy ass would have did, she thought, halfway smiling. Just as quickly as she condemned her father in her mind, the inspiration of her father acquitted her of being a perpetual sinner. He taught her sometime last year that those who smile while committing a sin will cry as they enter the gates of hell. She was wrong, and she had no basis to be smiling right now. 12 stitches? Damn. Oh, God. Am I going to jail? She wondered. She breathed deeply again, this time less voluntarily. She decided she wasn't going home. She damn sure wasn't going to jail. And that was that. If God was watching, and he was going to have to condemn or acquit her himself. No one could force her to do shit. 7:14 p.m., the same night. Gwen floated into a nap of depression a few minutes after getting off the phone with her mother. She came to consciousness as her sister's key hit the front door. She presented to be busy on her laptop as Hollis walked through the long corridor separating the front from the living room. Hey, Hollis greeted. What's up? Gwen asked. Nothing. How was your day? It was good, she said, trying to fill her out. How was yours? Good. I gotta pee, she said, making a beeline to the bathroom. Gwen powered up her phone, and within a minute, the voicemails were rolling in. 7 to be exact. She knew most, if not all of them, were from her mother, who obviously was unable to reach Hollis. She cut her phone back off. 32 minutes later. The sisters worked hand in hand making dinner. Chuck steak, mac and cheese, and salad. The girls ate with few words, a pleasant silence. It was clear that they both had things on their mind. Seemingly out of the clear blue sky, Gwen asked, "Why were you so sure that Daddy was going to win the rap battle against my brother?" Hollis smiled, yet therein was a warning for Gwen with the seriousness in her eyes. "First of all, Gwen, Junior was my brother too." She set the record straight. My fault, Gwen admitted. "You gotta understand," Hollis proceeded to answer Gwen's question. "Daddy is his music. He lived what he's talking about. There's a whole nother level of quality that comes with that. Daddy may not have all the money that these rappers have on the radio, but he's dumb nice. Plus, he be dropping knowledge about God. I'm sorry, but I knew he wasn't going to let Junior, his son, beat him." "Whatever. You're just the type to believe anything somebody tells you." "What?" Hollis demanded, daring Gwen to get beside herself again. "Society told you you need to go to college, so you went, and you didn't find what you was looking for. Daddy told you Allah was God, so you went out and got a Quran. Now you just all confused." "Yo," Hollis raised her hand as if to appear not to be offensive. "Since you're my sister, I'm gonna let that slide. But chill, yo. I'm gonna tell you one last time. Chill." Hollis positioned herself to enforce her words. A brief stare down made the tension in the kitchen heavy as the weight of the earth. "I think maybe you need to go take a walk before you get yourself caught up," Hollis suggested. "Before I get myself caught up?" Gwen asked, leaning back and screwing her face. "Yo, you won't find me among those who stutter," Hollis assured her sister, who obviously had her twisted. 1:16 a.m., the same night. It came to pass that the inspiration of God came upon Gwen. As she sat at the top floor landing in the staircase of her building, she was struck with the certainty that this experience was a token of things to come. This feeling was a fate. If she failed to gain self-control, her heart wasn't hardened to the point that she didn't know right from wrong, but her will wasn't strengthened to take charge of her body and her actions, especially her actions in public. It was weird, but it was all for certain. For this law was her law in her heart, even as she sat in her barren staircase, away from any person who could possibly intercede between her and God. God was calling her, but she knew not how to answer. But she knew that until she answered, these episodes would be with her until her dying day, and no peace would she find across God's green earth. She passed the cold night planning, thinking to herself, sometimes out loud, but not too loud. It came to pass that Gwen transcribed a line. That line came to her by some foreign inspiration. She complemented that line with another written line, which by God's leave rhymed. She did this a few times, and when the front side of the paper was filled with words, she read over her design to find that in the depths of this deeply dark night, she was no longer blind. She found her craft. 7:50 a.m. the next morning. Gwen approached the apartment front door, exhausted and hungry. "Yeah, but I didn't tell her to stay out all night," she heard Hollis say. She slapped herself on the head. How the hell could I forget that this is her late day? She asked herself. Her mother told me she gave me her phone number wrong. The voice on the other side of the door seemed to be gaining momentum. Gwen, alert, rocked back on her heels. She got to go home today. Hollis was definitely approaching the front door. Gwen darted off towards the staircase exit from which she just came. She'd try again later. 1:32 p.m. the next day. Amidst the ever-complex changes in her life, there was a part of Gwen that missed being out here, in this life-on-the-line environment. The hood was just hot. The girls were out. Even the shooters were out. The money makers and those who were just taking breaks in between doing life in prison. The few cops that did stroll down and around these blocks were clearly just occupying the neighborhood, only concerned with keeping order after the fact of a crime. This was the East Side. Normally, Gwen wouldn't be caught dead in less than fresh gear, let alone something she wore yesterday, but it was what it was. She thanked God that no one around here had seen her yesterday. Still, she felt some kind of way standing next to box cutter Keisha, who was playing her Pele leather like a star, and a nice polo hat and boots. This nigga Kareem swear he be doing it in that almost leather jacket he be rocking, box cutter Keisha said, pointing to Yvonne from the 15th floor's cousin. Gwen huffed and an excuse for a laugh. I bet you that shit don't keep him warm at all, she taunted. Word, my son probably be freezing his ass off. A sincere laugh came from Gwen this time, as well as inspiration from Allah. In a millisecond, she spotted an intruder from the corner of her eye. She weaved the offensive, simultaneously knocking what turned out to be a knife from the hand of who she could now identify as Aisha. Gwen's heart raced like an engine, and it wasn't pumping any Kool-Aid. She was strong. She squared up the would-be mutilator, prepared for downright war. As soon as she could plot her attack, she was cold-cocked in the side of her face by someone she never saw. Somewhere between blacking out and hitting the floor, Aisha grabbed her throat with a killer's intent. Gwen could feel her fingernails ripping, outright ripping, into the flesh on her neck. Perhaps it was for the better. She surely would have been unconscious, but for the natural instinct to save her own life. She opened her mouth as a lioness would, wide, strong, fierce, and took a monstrous bite out of Aisha's bony hand. Now, Aisha wanted nothing more than for Gwen to let go. But Gwen had other plans. Clamping down as a raging pit bull would, she pushed herself to her feet with that strength of hers. She bit harder, squeezed tighter. If it were possible to slaughter someone in this manner, Gwen would have reached that extent. Aisha's partner, who Gwen could now see was Naja from Forster, ran after the knife. That's when Gwen let go and ran for her life. 5:10 p.m. the next day. Even in the moments of experiencing it, Gwen knew this was the strongest she'd ever been in her life. She was getting hit from left and right, bombarded even, but she wasn't going to question the Lord anymore. He apparently was too great to speak to her, so she knew she had to trust in herself and have faith. She wasn't on her best behavior at the moment, but she knew she'd been down darker paths before. Perhaps this was the test of atonement, or perhaps it was the devil. Could he be in me? She removed the ice pack from the side of her face and stood up. She stood strong, looking out at the cold, hard city that she was about to deal with head on. She had been here before, when she so brazenly ran away from home last year. She didn't go anywhere but here, the safety of this very apartment and her sister, but she imagined she was about to go where no one could track her. She loved her family, but the love that she needed from them, they gave as a voided check. Alas, their credit was dead. She needed to know love the way it was to be transfixed in her heart, or there was no uncertainty about it. She would die trying. The heart in her chest was brave. She was ready to test God, to see if he could indeed walk her through the valley of the shadow of death yet again. And in her teenage mind, this was certainly a matter of life and death. She wasn't playing. Nobody could tell her what to do. She checked her swatch. 5:13 p.m. the same day. She looked over her bags as if to size them up. The big blue suitcase was the main culprit. Her North Face book bag and a Nike bag was no issue. The moment that she reached for her book bag was the same moment that her phone rang. Incoming, Candace. "What's up?" she answered, having to switch her phone to the other side of her face due to mild swelling. Yo, G, I'm trying not to say too much on the jack. I know the situation, but I need to see your pops. I need his help. For real, sis. Candace's request had Gwen's mind going in all sorts of directions. Where you at? She probed. The Zone 4 set crib. Hearing those words did wonders for Gwen's thoughts. She hadn't even considered the set spots, reserved apartments for sisterly activity, mainly bagging up weed, playing spades, and talking shit. There were at least 3 spots that she knew of. Zone 4 was the Isaac houses, further downtown from all the bullshit. That is where she would spend night 1. Tomorrow, she needed to go to the library with the plan that she had to devise tonight of how to get her black ass back in school plan. 10:41 p.m., the same night. Since they were kids living on the same floor in the building of Taft Projects, Candace always seemed to show up at the right time. Gwen played the whole situation cool. She stashed her suitcases at the top floor of the staircase and prayed over it before taking the elevator back down to the 10th floor. She hoped Candace didn't notice the stuffed backpack she was carrying, along with the growing knot on the side of her face. For all intents and purposes, Candace hadn't. She was in some sort of half-haunted, half-rebel zone, remorseful now that reality of her actions settled in. She had taken someone's life. However, there was something in her that pulled her forward to the gangster life. Candace had now walked into the territory that Gwen would never dare, so she couldn't relate, but she listened and did her duty as a friend. After venting and drinking a little, the girls found a corner of peace in the jungle-like, overcrowded apartment. It was actually Candace who suggested that they stay the night there. Candace didn't have much of a family, and what little family she did have, she was probably better off without. Candace often wondered who needed enemies with family like hers. She'd been through group homes, detention centers, psychiatric wards, and more. That's why the sisters meant so much to her. She would do anything for them. Honestly, Gwen preferred to be anywhere but with this wolf pack right now. But this was a decent start to her run. Allah hadn't exposed her to outright homelessness. Junebug, Harris, and Magnum P were playing CeeLo in the living room. She couldn't fathom how she would get any sleep here. But after washing her face and sending her father an email, she closed her eyes and tried. 5:01 a.m. the next morning. Something of the unknown was now consciously pulling Gwen from her sleep in the dark hours of the morning. Today, things were no different. All she could see was the weathered paint on the walls in front of her. She could hear the residue of the television in the front room. She turned around, and in doing so, she felt the side of her face swollen with tenderness. Candace was passed out with her mouth wide open. A sister Gwen couldn't identify was asleep on the pallet in the front next to the closet. Gwen made her way to the living room. There were sisters and roaches scattered everywhere. There was an empty bottle of Hennessy on the table, blunt guts, and cigarettes. Without making a sound, Gwen took a chair and gently sat in front of the window. Looking onto First Avenue, there was life there. Life that was doing something for her thoughts. Words were coming to her in ways that she was inspired to write down. 6:59 p.m. the same day. Tech looked at them like he could read the intricate stories of their lives across both their faces. He had his own duffel bag with him, which he set on the floor before addressing Gwen. "What the fuck happened to your face?" he asked as if he was ready to fight. "These bitches jumped me," she answered, not bothering to mind her language considering all things. Tech's frustration momentarily consumed him. Y'all fucking kids, man, he said, balling his mighty vengeance, struck fist, and turning away to squeeze them tighter. Both of the girls allowed him his weird little moment without disturbance. He shook it all off with a light wag of his head, then picked the bag up and began walking. "Hi, Tech," Candace said, timidly, following behind him, as if somehow reminding him that she was the one who requested to see him. "What's up?" he asked, not much interested in her answer at the moment. He looked both of them over again. "Y'all ate?" The girls both shook their heads, and they were certainly both hungry. "Come on, let's go get some Chinese food." 17 minutes later, Tech got caught up on their mutual affairs during a walk to the Chinese food store on Jerome Avenue. More of the parental/older man concerned with the direction of today's youth type grief ensued. But what was he gonna do? They were both knee-deep in shit now. "Okay, chicken broccoli," the woman called out to Tech from behind the counter. Gwen and Candace already had their orders of wings and plain fried rice, as Tech wouldn't let them order any pork on his dime. "So what's your plans for school?" he asked Gwen as he took his seat. "I'm thinking about getting my GED, she answered sharply, apparently to Candace's surprise. "I just gotta find a way to take my SAT. If I score well and take the GED, I could probably get into college earlier than I otherwise would have." Tech nodded his head in accordance as he doused his rice with duck sauce. "So you still want to go to college?" he asked. "Yeah, of course," Gwen reconfirmed. "How else am I going to make it out here?" she asked what she intended on being a rhetorical question. "You're going to make it out of here by the sweat of your brow, one way or the other. College ain't the only way, although I'm happy to hear you still want to go that route. But there's more than one way to skin a cat," the Dres said as he looked over at Candace. "What about you?" "Oh, I can't go to no college," she laughed off the manner. "Not with an attitude like that." He took the time to chew his food as if he were an African king of this Chinese restaurant. He wiped his mouth. "Y'all girls gotta strengthen y'all willpower." Candace said, feeling some deep truth to his words, what she often did. "Where you sleeping tonight?" she asked Tech. He was so lost for his words that he almost choked on the nothingness that came out of his throat. "'Cause we got a place you can stay if you want," she suggested, seemingly lightening his burden of having to answer her previous question. She looked over at Gwen as if to get her approval. Gwen gave it to her with a vigorous nod of her head, unable to speak with her mouth full. The thought lit a fire of optimism in Gwen's chest. Having her father with her tonight would be a refreshing blessing, and it would probably work for him as well. "Where at?" Tech asked. 11:40 p.m. the same night. Sade and Bugs were standing by the front door smoking a blunt when the trio got back to the spot. Gwen heard Sade loudly whispering her response to Bugs, suggesting that they put out the blunt in Tech's presence. No, he probably want to smoke too, shit. The apartment was unusually quiet tonight. Including Sade and Bugs, there were only 3 other sisters that Gwen could see. They walked into the first bedroom, the same room that the girls slept in last night. "You know who that is, right?" They heard Sade talking loudly again. "That's Tech." "Oh, word? I thought that was that nigga," Bugs said. Tech sat on the floor and threw his muscle-bound torso to the wall behind him. "Oh, man, these little niggas gonna get me arrested," he said, halfway joking, but fully exhausted. He looked around. "So nobody ever come in here fucking with y'all?" "Nah. Some of the big sisters, they try to come through every now and then and give blows. But that's it. As long as I was set, keep the payroll right, and rent gets paid, no questions asked. "What you doing tomorrow?" he asked his daughter, as if he'd heard enough. "I don't know." "Aight, yo, you coming with me. You gotta get busy out here. This shit ain't for you." Those were the last words that the dread uttered before God took his soul for rest for the night. Gwen stayed up another hour or so. She took a sip of the hemrock with Candace and the sister from the Bloody 15th set who was spending the night, and the word went forth. 5:19 a.m. the next morning. Tech was already awoke when Gwen got up. He was in front of the computer with a Tupac track playing lowly. She noticed that the living room was substantially cleaner. "What's up?" she greeted. "Nothing. You couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Nah," she said. One of the sisters on the couch rolled over, and they both lowered their tones accordingly. Tech motioned towards the kitchen. "I bought some milk and cereal." "I'm down for you, so ride with me. My enemies your enemies, 'cause you ain't never had a friend like me. Nobody knows what would be. My enemies your enemies." Gwen pulled a chair and sat next to her father. "I've been waking up around the same time every day for a month now," she confided in him. "It's the weirdest thing." "What you been doing?" "Huh?" she questioned before crunching down on a spoonful of Basic 4. "What you been doing with the time once you got up?" Tech asked. "Nothing," she said as if she found the question strange. For some odd reason, she didn't want to mention the fact that she'd been writing down what turned out to be lyrics, or at least rhyming words within no particular context. She had no clue what the grand scope of it was, so she kept the art secret. "You should probably use the time to get your first prayer in for the day. You been praying?" "Nah, I ain't gonna lie. I try to say a little something before I go to sleep, and I thank him when I wake up, but nah, that's not gonna get it," Tech interrupted, as she knew he would. "Half-ass ain't for you. That little, 'Hey, Lord, what's up? Thank you. I'll talk to you later' mess ain't gonna get it. Regular prayers are bonding upon you." "Daddy, please," Gwen said, not really trying to hear it now. "Ain't no fucking daddy, please. You know how many times I done asked God to overlook your sins and take you into his nearness for your soul's sake? You better find a way to praise him. You better find a way to say his name, or else this is gonna be your fate," he said, turning his shoulders towards the 4 drunken sisters sprawled behind him. "There's no one who can intercede on your behalf once your life is over, Gwen. You have to pass this test. He's calling you. That's why you're here. That's why you're waking up before the sunrise, so he can display his power to you." Those last words struck a chord that connected to her heart. His message was too perpetual to be insincere. He was too intelligent and battle-tested not to have learned by life. There was something already in Gwen that let her know exactly what she had to do first. She had to chill with the liquor. She had been drinking herself to sleep for the past 2 nights, and her rate of consumption had been going up and up. She would replace the night drinks with night prayers. She would pray when the good Lord woke her up in the morning, first thing. 9:55 a.m. the same day. Tech walked down the street like he wasn't wanted dead or alive. His hair was pulled back in a ponytail, which was going a long way towards making him look fairly regular. He wore Yankee-fitted, blue polo jeans, some Timbs, and he was freshly shaven. He was resurrected today, and his new soul was attractive to Gwen. "You got to get involved out here," Tech said, strolling down 102nd Street like a prince, instructing Gwen as if she were his heiress. "The Holy Quran instructs us that God created the heavens and earth for just ends, so you're entitled to happiness, but you will have nothing but what you strive for." The weather was holding up nicely for it to be the middle of the winter. Tech and Gwen trekked from the First Avenue apartment they'd spent the night in to the west side, striving for a piece of God's bounty. There was a line of about 10 people already waiting to get into the Bloomingdale Library on 100th Street. When the head librarian unlocked the door, they flooded in. You're going to spend an hour reading through one of the career services handbooks. After that, we're going to apply for some jobs on the computer together, Tex said as he entered. The word went forth. 12:13 p.m., the same day. With less than 5 minutes remaining on a 45-minute computer session, Gwen got an email that she figured she should run past her father. She walked over to the big black man reading the Quran at the table next to the magazine rack. "Daddy," she said, tapping him on the shoulder, "I applied for a position at an energy company. I want you to take a look at the email they sent me." Gwen noticed the woman that Tech was sitting next to check him out as he stood up, as if she preferred reading him as opposed to the book in front of her. Tech leaned to the computer screen and began reading. "Hello, Gwen. This is Mr. Orange from Audiobook's Energy. I received your resume from Craigslist. I would like you to come in for an interview today at 3 o'clock. Our address is 1438 Bedford Avenue, Bronx, New York, 10469. Please bring 2 forms of ID." "Cool," Tex said, looking at her. "It's probably a commission joint, but go see what they're talking about." "Okay," she said, smiling at the thought of having a stable source of income. If worse came to worse, she could always hit the block with the sisters and make some extra money to get by. But simply getting by is not what she was looking for. She wanted a luxurious life. 3:03 p.m., the same day. There were kids all around. Even a receptionist had to be in her very early 20s and every bit the unprofessional. "You got a pen, right?" she asked, popping the gum in her mouth the whole time. "Yes," Gwen answered, taking the application over the front desk. As Gwen went to reclaim her seat in the waiting area, the apparent boss emerged from a room in the back. "That's your 3 o'clock, the receptionist advised him, pointing towards Gwen. "Hi, Ray Orange." The short Indian man extended a hand. "You are?" "Gwen," she introduced herself. "Gwen, yes, come with me," he said. Ray gave her a breakdown of the company, the history, her position, which was energy consultant. She would be going door to door, trying to get residents to sign an application to convert to Audiobook's Energy from their local utility company. She would be provided with a shirt, ID badge, work binder, and a partner to work the field with daily. "You have any more questions?" he asked after explaining these things. "Duh," she thought to herself. "How much y'all pay?" she asked, never the one to be shy. "I'm very glad you asked that." He got up and grabbed the magic marker and eraser from the whiteboard behind him. "Here's how it works." He proceeded to sell her. "Every application you do, we'll pay you $25 for, and that's weekly. We also have daily cash bonuses, and we're always doing office raffles. Last week, I gave away a free TV to the top seller for that pay period." "And how many applications does your average rep do every week?" she asked, not so sure about this. "Well, you have all types of people. I have some guys who go out there and do just enough to get by. They don't have their product knowledge down. They're not prepared. Then there's reps that go out there and do anywhere from 10 to, let's say, 20 applications per week. And that's local." "What do you mean local?" "We have company road trips every week." "That's something I forgot to tell you. We have 3 company vans. We use one of them and work somewhere out of town for the week. That's where our guys make most of their money, because people out of town are a lot nicer than they are here in New York. Local." That last aspect was what pushed Gwen over the threshold. If she could get on those road trips, she would be winning of a certainty. She would not only have a place to stay while making money, but she could also travel. She was in. A knock on the office door indicated that the interview time was up. "Come in, Mr. Orangel." A Spanish brother stuck his head out with extra slick on his hair. "You want me to start the pitch circle?" "Yes, come here for a second, Sanchez. I'm going to put her on your team." He looked at Gwen. "This is Daniel Sanchez. He's going to be your supervisor. Go with him. He's going to show you the sales pitch. I have a 4 o'clock meeting I need to get to. Welcome aboard," Ray said, reaching for a hand. "I look forward to paying you a lot of money." Gwen accepted his handshake with a smile and followed the supervisor into the main meeting room. "Okay, guys, we're about to get started with the pitch circle," Sanchez announced in a loud voice. "Everyone gather around." The 20 or so representatives gathered in a semicircle like zombies in a cult. They wore all black company jackets with oversized ID badges hanging over, and their company binders were positioned in a certain way in all of their hands. "Hi, sir," Sanchez said in that annoyingly loud imitation professional tone of his. "My name is Daniel Sanchez. I'm an energy consultant for Audiobook's Energy." He lifted the badge on his chest and displayed it at the imaginary customer in front of him. "I'm just here to make sure you qualify for free savings that you may be entitled to in your gas bill." The way he pointed to his binder reminded Gwen of something that a cop would do. She had to stop herself from laughing aloud. "These niggas done lost their mind," she thought, chuckling a little. "All I need, sir, is a copy of your old or new gas bill. I don't need to come in." He waved his hand to the negative. "I'll wait out here." He turned his back and mimicked writing in his binder. "And make sure you turn," he said, looking around the room. "That puts in a customer's head that they need to react. They need to go get their gas bill, okay?" He agreed with himself. "So I'm going to do it once more, then we'll do it in the pitch circle. Hi, sir." 4 minutes later. Gwen had center stage. Therefore, all the guys who were sneak peeking at her all afternoon now had the green light to stare. She held her binder out, dead set on projecting her voice as loud as she could. This was all still funny to her. "Hi, sir. My name is Gwen. I'm an integer..." She fumbled over her words, something terrible, as if she had marbles in her mouth. She spilled over in laughter that was truly good for her soul. I could be an actress, she thought instantly, as she knew with certainty that she was going to nail her next attempt after she stopped laughing. Failure was never an option. She straightened herself up at once. "Hi, ma'am. I mean, sir," she corrected herself to the welcome of another quick round of laughters. "I'm sorry." "Nah, it's cool," Sanchez said, smiling at her as if he liked her energy. "Juice by Gwen," said Travis, another supervisor, who Gwen could tell just by his build and facial scars was an ex-con. "Juice," the choir sang. "Whoa," Gwen said, putting her hands out as if to say she wanted no parts of whatever juice was or meant. "Juice means join us in creating excitement," Trevor explained. "Cool. All right, well, let me just do this," she said, getting serious and repositioning herself. "Hi, sir. My name is Gwen." 9 minutes later. Gwen sat by her lonesome, watching the troops hit the field, waiting for her supervisor to let her know when her start date would be. "You ready?" Sanchez asked after he finished addressing his team. He approached Gwen holding a cardboard box between his hands. "Ready for what?" "To go to work," he said, as if it should have been obvious. "Y'all sending me out today, but I don't know the pitch, the prices. I'm not ready to be knocking on nobody's door talking about I'm an energy consultant." Sanchez laughed. "Honestly, Gwen, at the end of the day, those people aren't buying energy. They're buying you," he said, keeping it real with her. "The only thing you really need to know in this game is where to get the person to sign and how to count your money." He handed her the box in his hand, which had her uniform, her ID, and a binder with a gas bill on front. 5:47 p.m., the same day. After getting doors cold slammed in her face during the first several attempts, Gwen figured she'd try her own unique approach this time. "Hi, sir. We're out here signing people up for free savings on their gas bill. You want some?" she asked the 60-plus-year-old man. "Sure." 10:14 p.m., the same day. "Let me get 4 chicken wings and a large lo mein." Tech ordered their food and made his way to Gwen, who was seated in the booth next to the window. "So you got 2 sales today, huh?" "Yes, Daddy," she said, lighting up, putting her phone away. "I just went out there like, yo, what's up? This is my first day on the job. I need signed applications," she exaggerated. "Word?" Tech asked proudly as he dropped half of the pint of rice in a plate in front of Gwen. "Yup. Oh, I think you could get a job there too. They don't care about who they got out there. I ain't even showed them my ID. They just looking for anybody that could sell." "All right," Tech said, nodding his head lightly, checking out his striving child. "But don't tell him I'm your father, though," he warned. "Tell him I'm your Uncle David." "Uncle David?" she asked. Tech nodded his head positively without saying a word, his face a spitting image of hers. "All right," she smiled at the thought of working beside her pops. Having him around for the past few days was uplifting her spirits. "When was the last time you talked to your mother?" he asked. "A few days ago." She could see the disapproval in his look. "What?" she asked. "You better call your mother. Let her know you all right." Tech pulled out his wallet. "You got money for a Metro card and lunch tomorrow?" "I got like $20 left." He gave her $10. "I gotta go to Brooklyn tomorrow and pick up some money from that nurse chick I'm training. After that, I'll come fill out an application at your job." 3:48 p.m. the next day. Within 5 minutes, Tech came strolling out of the office with a binder, ID tag, and a grin like he knew he was about to eat. He walked into the main meeting room behind Mr. Orange. All the representatives and supervisors were waiting to begin the pitch circle. "Good morning," Mr. Orange addressed everyone. "Good morning," everyone greeted as they began clapping like brainless pawns. "Good morning, juice, juice, juice." Mr. Orange smiled. "All right, for a $10 bonus, who can tell one of the newbies what juice stands for?" Daniel Sanchez raised his hand. "Join us in creating excitement," he answered correctly. "Good," Mr. Orange said, handing him the $10 bill. "Now, I know it was a little slow out there yesterday due to the weather and some other things that were beyond our control, but it's a new day and we're going to go out there and give it a go. Juice by that?" "Juice," the zombies replied. "So I'm not going to take up too much of your time today. I just want you guys to get out there and knock on as many doors as possible," he said, pumping his fist. "Real quick, we have a new rep hitting the field today. I have a lot of confidence in this guy. You know, you just meet certain people and it's just like something about them." With his hair, stature, uprightness, and glow, Tech stuck out like a sore thumb in most crowds. The people in the room were peeping in and out of his direction as Mr. Orange spoke of him as David, his would-be alias. "I want you to give a big, juicy, on-the-books energy welcome to David," Mr. Orange instructed his workforce. "David, I'm sorry," he turned to Tech. "What's your last name again?" Rasul," he spit out. Like most rappers' freestyles, quick and connected only by the grace of God. But he was done. David Rasul was hired and given a manager position out of the gate due to his experience and age. Their days were long, full of uncertainty, mostly no's, and walking from door to door trying to figure out why the last person rejected them. As Gwen and Dad got up to speed with the job, they began to make enough money to save for their own apartment. Tech was still doing his personal training on the side. He and Gwen kept in the habit of reading together daily. She was preparing herself for a GED exam, and Tech was preparing himself for whatever phase of his life was next. They played chess together exercised, talked, shared, laughed, ate, and prayed together. Knowing that she was with her father took some of the rage from Gwen's mother. Yet one could imagine the fury stirred up in her suburban home as her daughter's life took a discourse. Still, the word went forth. April 1st, 2010. There was a 200 application quota between all 7 reps. If they brought in 60 or more on any one day, then the company would treat them to a free dinner, pizza, and 2 2-liter sodas. They were Albany, New York bound. For Tech and Gwen, these road trips meant time away from the dirty, dense apartment that had become home. The group was staying at a hotel on Western Avenue and paying for it out of their own checks. They were also paying for gas, food, and tolls. Nothing was free around here. Thanks to all Mr. Orange's bickering, new rules, and juicy crap, they hadn't left the office until after 3 p.m. And due to the nature of their work, they couldn't hit the field after the sun went down. A trust thing in getting people to open their doors. The Dodge Caravan sat nearly still in horrific New York traffic for over an hour before they got on the Tappan Zee Bridge. John, the designated driver, sat back, refusing to get any more frustrated than he already was. "Yo, where we at?" Tech, or David, asked as he turned down the stereo. John looked out the passenger seat. "Coming up on Newburgh." "Newburgh is the hood," Tech said just above his breath, familiar with the town as he'd done a show or two there. "A word? I always do better in the hood," Larry said in his heavy, Far Rockaway accent from the back seat. "Let's do it." "I don't know about working the hood," Nick, the only white guy on the trip and one of the few in the company at large, suggested. "Yo, Nick, we got to try to do some numbers today. By the time we make it to Albany, it's going to be dark outside. And you know nobody opening their doors in the dark." Tech reasoned further. "We're down $150 just by coming on this road trip. If we don't work the day, then we're down the day too." One could feel the energy of approval swaying Tech's way. The other sales representatives and John were starting to see the light. "We're hitting it then," John declared with certainty, activating his turn signal and exiting the highway. The Dodge found its way to Union Avenue, the main street. Larry, Gwen, Tech, and Porsche hopped out. Mike and Nick remained with John. They were going to work the other side of town. Tech got his person and game together as he checked out the map of the area. "All right, yo, I'ma roll with Gwen. We gonna..." "Chill, Dave. I want to work with Gwen," Larry interrupted Tech politely, staring at Gwen. Tech turned to look at Gwen as well. That's when she stopped blushing. "All right," he agreed, not trying to hate on that little young thing. He kind of liked Larry anyway. He had a job, and by the way he carried himself, Tech could tell he wasn't a punk. Tech paired up with Porsche, and they went across the street. Gwen put on a coat of lip gloss and her identification badge. Larry tucked in his shirt and his pants, then got his binder together. "What's the local utility out here?" "NASEC?" he asked. "Oh, it's not Con Ed?" Gwen asked, now puzzled yet smiling, as she often did when Larry spoke to her. "Nah, man," he said with a handsome and rugged grin. "You was going to be knocking on these people's doors saying the wrong thing," he joked. "Oh, snap. Look," he directed their attention across the street. "David got one already." Tech had a middle-aged woman signing her name in the binder. The 2-hour ride to Albany was all the more sweet from the Newburgh success. Everyone in the van had gotten one except for Nick. John was grooving to an old-school mixtape as he drove, defying the speed limit for the duration of the trip. Larry listened to his MP3 player in peace. Tech was in his own head, as he frequently was, putting music together while trying to look like he wasn't. Porsche was knocked out. and so were Nick and Mike. At the hotel, Gwen got her best sleep that she'd had in months. In the morning, she got up and made the most of the continental breakfast. At the computer station, Nick and John helped Tech choose the territory they were going to work for the day. Knowing the importance of the trip, Gwen pulled up a chair and joined them. Between her and her father, they needed to do 40 applications each to handle their personal business and still be on track to get their apartment in 3 weeks. The stakes were high, but that's when Tech and his progeny performed their best. They hit the field in Vaudeville, New York, a small suburb just north of Albany. Gwen stepped out of the van, knowing Allah was going to let her rock out today. She wasn't taking no for an answer. Tech emerged from the other side. He gave his $19 chinos a slight tug at the waist. The look in both of their eyes was ready. We going in today. Tech's words coincided with his demeanor, which coincided with Gwen's resolution. Today, it was about the money. She didn't care how many doors she had to knock on. She wasn't coming back to the van with less than 5 applications. Hi. Gwen smiled at the man who opened the first door she knocked on. How you doing? She asked, and actually waited for a response, applying the indifference approach. Okay, cool. Well, listen, we're out here. She turned and directed his attention to Tech, who was at the side door of the second house on the block, looking for any signs of life. Signing people up for savings on their gas bill, Gwen said. No, I don't need it, the man said, closing the door slowly. You don't need savings on your gas bill? She asked as a last sales resort. She shook it off, making her way quickly to the next house. A poorly maintained 2-family house with cats sprawled about. She pressed the doorbell and neither felt nor heard any buzzing. She gave a mild knock, still nothing. She decided to scale the steps to the side leading up to the second-floor apartment. Hi, can I help you? Someone asked as she took the first step. Hi, my name is Gwen. She turned back around. I'm with Audiobook's Energy. We're just out here signing guys up for their savings who may be entitled to it from their gas bill. Now, all I need to see if you qualify is a copy of an older new gas bill. I don't need to come in, sir. I'll wait right here. She hit him with the turn and could hear the footsteps as he went to get the gas bill. It never ceased to amaze her when the sales pitch actually worked. While waiting, she stepped out of the vestibule and back onto the porch. She looked around and couldn't see her father. That meant that someone had invited him inside. It took Gwen an additional 2 explanations of the program, as well as a good 2 rebuttals, but she got the sale. The next 2 hours, or 32 doors, wouldn't be nearly as kind. She had completely lost her father by the time she got the signature. He was likely anywhere in this small town. She eventually left her pre-scouted territory in search of a different demographic. So she crossed over to Main Street. Within a few doors, she had another sale. As the man was reading over the application, Gwen looked up and spotted Tech rounding the corner onto her block. He was way out of his territory as well. Apparently, those in search of the numbers all thought alike. He opened the gate of a fence-enclosed yard and approached the front door. Sign right here? Gwen's customer asked. Yes, she said. She could hear dogs barking viciously in her dad's direction. Chill, chill. Gwen looked up and saw Tech trying to dissuade a pit bull from chewing his ass off. Just chill out for a second, he yelled, holding his hands out. Oh, shit, Gwen said. What happened? The now frightened old woman asked, looking up. Nothing, ma'am. Thanks for your business. I'ma holler, Gwen said, taking the work binder from the woman. Gwen sprinted down the block. Daddy, she called as she got to the scene. Tech looked back at her just as a second dog emerged from behind the pit bull, momentarily distracting the first pit. Tech took that second to dodge for it. Both dogs in full pursuit. Tech pulled a Summer Olympics leap over the fence to safety. I'm getting too old for this shit, he said over Gwen's laughing. 14 minutes later. How many of y'all did? John asked as the father and daughter made their way back to the van. 9, Gwen said boastfully. How many you did? 7. I did 8, yo, Larry said, proud of himself, as that was a personal best for him. Good, Tex said, happy for the team. That's 15, plus my 9, that's 24. How many y'all did? He asked Mike. I did 7 too, the soft-spoken senior rep from the Dominican Republic answered. That's 31. So between Nick and Porsche, we need 9 for free dinner. Yo, tell Frank we want dinner tonight, not that dry-ass pizza, Larry said. Tech laughed as he dropped himself in the passenger seat, thoroughly exhausted from trekking all over this small town in search of God's bounty. I got you, bro. 11:47 p.m., the same night. Back at the hotel, the entire group was gathered in Tech and John's room, enjoying the pizza. Larry was sharing his plans of becoming an electrician with Gwen as they sat in front of the television. Tech and John were deep in a game of chess. It was John's turn to move, and Tech, along with Nick and Mike, who were overlooking, waited for him to do something. Porsche was pulling on the blunt near the window. Yo, she called out to the man she knew as David, holding the streaming stick, a sticky green, in her hand. Word, yo, Tech said as he rose his muscle-bound body. Because by the time this nigga move, it'll be time to go home. They laughed. You know, Nick said, nice from having smoked already. I felt good out there today. It was just like you told me, Dave. I just learned my pitch, and I had confidence in myself. Right, Tech said, proud to have help. I went through that when I was selling my first album. Oh, you make music? Porsche asked, her eyes as red as the bedspread she was sitting on. I do a little something every now and then, Tech, or David said, trying to regain his balance after such a slip-up. What's your stage name? Larry asked from the other side of the room. Cool Chucky G, Tech spit out. Even Gwen could tell that he was just trying to keep a straight face after having said the first thing that absolutely came to his mind. Larry laughed in a way that would have been insulting had that actually been Tech's name. Cool Chucky G, he asked to confirm the corniness. D, Tech said for the sake of salvaging some sense of the name. D, he reinforced to the tune of a slight smile, as in David. Long story, but anyway, yeah, Nick, you have to understand that you're entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness out there. It's just like Mr. Orange talks about with the positive mental attitude. That's what I learned to maintain when I was selling my albums. Every no brings you closer to a yes. That's real. But one thing I know for sure, God ain't gonna let you starve, he said, holding a blunt out for Nick, whose turn it was to ride the Mary Jane train. Sunday was their only day off for the week. That's when Gwen did her reading in preparation for her upcoming GED exam. She was growing in confidence by the day that she would score well on an almost insultingly easy exam. She was targeting 5 colleges that was going to take all of her energy to get into. She wrote in the middle of the night. She and her father were regulars on the company road trips due to the housing, freedom of traveling, and not dealing with the politics of the office every day, as well as the better responses from the people outside the city. They were getting paid and saving and planning and reading and praying and working and exercising and writing. The days were going by, the weeks even. Things were okay. As usual, the Monday morning office was loud and chaotic. Sanchez had a group of new hires in the corner under the teamwork poster, going over some rebuttals. When Mr. Orange walked in the room, Gwen stood up, alert with her binder and ID badge. All right, guys, can I have your attention? First, I want to congratulate the road trip warriors this week on an outstanding performance. They basically carried the whole office with 202 apps. Juice by that? Juice. I want to get you guys out of here, so I'm going to do this quick. I want to present the Employee of the Month award to our newest supervisor, David Russell. The group clapped Truly proud of Tech. He did go hard out there, and he intangibly demand that of those around him. Mr. Orange pulled out $100 bill out of his shirt pocket and handed it to Tech. Here's your bonus. Keep up the good work. I know you guys are heading to Binghamton today, so go kick ass. 4:01 p.m. the same day. Congrats, Mr. Employee of the Month, Gwen said to her dad, looking to pick at his working brain. He was sitting in the back row of the van for a change, staring out of the vast beauty of New York State. He waved the notion off as silly. I ain't gassed. I know how these companies operate. As soon as I start growing and seeing too much out of the game, they're going to get rid of me. But you know what this trip and this extra $100 mean for us, right? It means you're going to give me my dream Sweet 16 party? Gwen said facetiously. Sweet 16 party? Tech asked with a sour face. Daddy? Gwen, come on, man. I was thinking we can get an apartment sooner than later. She pouted, not trying to hear his side of the story. I never asked you for too much, she added with those eyes of hers. All right, yo, fuck it. He caved in quickly, still thoroughly in love with his daughter's happiness. You want a nice Sweet 16? We'll give you a nice Sweet 16. As if he needed to rechannel his thinking from the money he just went down, Tech grabbed her iPod off her lap, tuned in, and zoned out. Gwen curled into him. As usual, John was doing the driving. He was on his cell phone, blowing as much of his cigarette smoke as he could through the crack window. Mike was in the passenger seat looking at the map. He was up next for supervisor and playing the position. Like David, Larry peacefully indulged in his iPod. He wrote in a composition notebook. Gwen figured he was doing some work for his electrician exam. This was the first road trip for Melissa and Jamal. Jamal was new. He hadn't even been with the company 2 weeks. But he had a lot of game, so Mr. Orange trusted that under David's direction, he would be able to turn this into a successful trip. Melissa was a quiet college girl who would be working behind a desk for 3 times more money if the country wasn't in an economically depressed state. Inspired by Larry, Gwen reached around her to the trunk area and removed her book bag. She used the remainder of the sunlight for the day to study for her GED exam, and the word went forth. 2 days later, Gwen had been walking through the streets of Binghamton, New York, for hours in search of her first application for the day. She switched her territories twice already. Tired and hungry, the optimism about making any money today was gone, which was vaguely the tone of this entire road trip. She dwelt in a land just south of the city's recreation park. Southwest of the local Catholic high school, she decided that she'd give it one last push for the day. As she approached to ring the doorbell, she heard music coming from the backyard. With no alternate territory or time to spare, Gwen bravely made her way to the back. It wasn't likely that she would get someone to sign up while they were relaxing at a barbecue, but at least she was going to try for trying's sake. Approaching the backyard, she spotted her dad immediately, as most people would, by his thick, abstract hair. He stood almost affectionately close to a 30-something woman, chit-chatting. Here, look, another woman said, rushing Tech to show him pictures in her phone. That's how my girl do it when we go out. We do it right. Damn, girl, you got the woody booty, Tech declared. Daddy, Gwen called out, now right behind him. Oh, what's up? Tech reached out and brought her into him with a kiss on the forehead. This is my youngest daughter right here. Hi, Gwen said shyly from under his heavy arm. How many you got today? He inquired. None, she said, disappointed in herself. Bet. 2 of her neighbors will be back out in a minute. He motioned his head towards his newly acquired friend. They went to get their gas bills. You could sign them up. All right, she said, her day immediately brighter. Go make you a plate. He pointed to the table of food that was calling her. Gwen fueled up, chilled out, and signed up the 2 customers who her father told her about. She even got another one on her own. She finished the day as the top seller, as the whole team had a slow one out there. Although the team didn't qualify for free dinner that night, all the sales reps still passed their time in Tech and John's room. Everyone had to do for themselves regarding food. With this being their last night on the road, most people's funds were nearly exhausted. John, Mike, and Melissa went to Wendy's. Larry and Jamal got dinner off the McDonald's dollar menu. Tech and Gwen had filled their stomachs early at the barbecue and later with their doggy bags. That's it, brother. Checkmate, Tech said, raising up from the chessboard. Let's do it again, John insisted, still trying to verify the legitimacy of Tech's claim to victory. Brother, you gonna have to practice on a computer or something, Tech said, stretching his upper body out with exhaustion and boredom. You not all that good, man. I won the one before that. Yeah, but how many you lost before that? What, 5 in a row? Gwen's phone, as she sat on the edge of her pop's bed, watching the television. It was Candace. What's up? Yo, this bitch Aisha just came through here with like 10 bitches from her set looking for you. What? Gwen asked. She couldn't imagine that Aisha still wanted problems with her to that extent. Gwen beat her in a fair fight. She'd been the victim of her vicious, sneaky physical and verbal attacks, and she still wanted more? Gwen feared what she perceived needed to be done. Yup, that bitch is on some shit. She wants you bad, Gwen, Candace confirmed. In the hotel room, Tech and John were still bickering about the number of wins Tech had. No, like 3, John hollered. Brother, you out here cotton picking mine? I beat you the last 5 times straight. Whatever, you think you're better than everybody, John said, aggravated, as he removed himself from the room. But yo, I gotta go, Candace said. I would try to avoid the set spot if I was you, because they watching, and they know your pops be here too. Saturday. The morale in the van was dirt low. No one really had a good week. Most of the territory that was scouted had been worked by other energy companies recently, and it had been raining most of the week. Today was no exception. Saturdays were usually short days, since the team had a long drive home. They also had to meet with Mr. Orange, who would be waiting for them at the office with their paychecks. Through the light precipitation, they were Poughkeepsie, New York bound. The stereo was at a notch just above silent, but that was all that was needed for Gwen to hear LaRonda's voice singing therefrom. Oh, that's my jam. Bump that, Melissa requested, bobbing her head silly. Every other city we go, every other video, no matter where we go, our pockets stay on swole. Gwen gave sight to her father, who was slouched down in the passenger seat. She wondered what he was thinking. There he was working this crappy job, saving every penny to be able to afford to move into a low-rent basement apartment, while the woman who left him was flourishing in wealth and commercial success. A sudden slam on the brakes forced Gwen's every energy elsewhere. Shit, she screamed, grabbing her ankle in sheer grief. Yo, man, didn't I tell you about driving this motherfucker like a race car? Tech's voice ascended with every word. John looked at him with his face twisted. Oh, man, cool out. Employing no further attempt of talking the matter out, Tech smacked the side of his face with his fist. The clap of meat and flesh took the attention of everyone in the van, especially John, who grabbed Tech's arm and tried to tie him up. Gwen forgot about her ankle for a moment. The wrestling men groaned and tussled until John managed to free himself enough to open up the door and back out. In no time, Tech had done the same. Gwen's heart raced as she watched the men flash their ready fists in the glare of the headlights. As she tried to exit the van, she discovered her ankle was sprained. Tech struck with a quick right. John absorbed the shot with the side of his dome, And as if he had had the senses knocked back into him, he backed off. But backing off wasn't on Tech's agenda. He advanced. A few quick decoy jabs and a blow to the body that could be heard down the block. John's face was flushed of pride and refilled with downright distress. Still on the aggressive, Tech moved in. Guard up and legs strong, he launched himself into another body shot, which brought John to the earth. Barely able to speak, John said, "Fuck you," holding his ribs as if they were ready to disassemble. "No, fuck you," Tech said calmly and clearly as he climbed in the car. "Come on, y'all," he yelled at the guys who left the van to watch the action. He drove the crew back to the office. One of the sales managers was waiting with their paychecks instead of Mr. Orange. Gwen's ankle was beginning to throb. Ever the gentleman, Larry helped out of the van and unloaded her bags. They received their checks one by one with the aspiration of simply going home and getting back to the normalcy of their lives. Larry approached Gwen with his arms extended for a hug. His gym bag was slung across his right shoulder. "Yo, shorty, be good." "All right, you too," Gwen said, hugging him back, embracing him sincerely. "Yo, David," Larry called out to Tech, who was explaining the fight to Sanchez. He approached with his hand out for a 5. "Sign this for me," he said as he snuck Tech a copy of his own album. Tech looked at him as if he'd seen a ghost. "It's all good, bro," Larry said, holding his hands out to show no aggression. "I've been a fan." 12:15 a.m. the same night. Gwen and Tech were somewhere on the outskirts of Queens at the beginning of Long Island, or vice versa. Since John was somewhere laid out on a back street in Brooklyn and Mr. Orange couldn't meet them tonight, Tech came into the blessings of keeping the company van until Monday. They just drove. They already had their bags with them from the road trip and they couldn't go back to the set crib, which Tech wasn't aware of until a half hour ago. Gwen lied and told him that the apartment got raided. "It's going to be another week before I have the money to get the room." It was Tech's turn to surprise her. "My check was half of what I thought it was going to be." "I figured it was going to be a month by the look on your face when you opened your envelope," Gwen joked. Tech turned from his serious grilling of the road and gave her a little smile. He pulled over on the side street. Slowly he drove, slowly, and then parked. "My check was light too," she informed him. The company had hit them with several chargebacks for applications that didn't go through. "Get comfortable," Tech said as he shut down the engine. 11 minutes later. Tech took the middle row and Gwen took the back. The tinted windows created a safe haven. The sweaters in their bags created heat. Gwen had something particular in her mind to create a better environment. "Yo, Pops, you don't got no more of that weed?" "What? Fuck out of here. I ain't letting your little ass smoke around me." "Why not? Yo, Daddy, I smoked weed mad times already. You bugging." "What?" he asked, scooting up and checking her eyes. By the look in his, Gwen knew she had him in the bag. "Fuck out of here. I ain't letting your little ass smoke around me, and that's that," he insisted, laying back. "You gonna roll it?" 7 minutes later. "Yo, if anybody asks, I'm gonna tell them you my cousin Delroy from Pittsburgh," Gwen said, looking at her Pops as she blew a smooth cloud of smoke. Tech's eyes, a storm of red, gave a few faint high laughs. "Why in the hell would I be your cousin Delroy from Pittsburgh?" he asked before snatching the blunt from her. "Man, give me this shit. Fuck is you talking about, Delroy from Pittsburgh?" "Yeah," Gwen said calmly and spaced out, "'cause they don't want to know your real name." Tech blew out a cloud of his own. "Yeah, but if anything, we could use my name from the energy company. David Smith Russell," he corrected himself. Gwen bust out laughing. She laughed so hard that Tech broke out laughing herself. And so the party was on. The fact that they were going to be camping out in this cold, dirty van didn't matter. Gwen pulled out a fresh, clean t-shirt and wrapped it around her jacket as a makeshift pillow. As she stretched out across the seats to relieve her body, she thanked God for her compact constitution, which was an advantage tonight. God being on her brain, she figured she'd pick her earthly father's brain about her heavenly father. Daddy, she said sharply and suddenly, let me ask you a question. Like, do you know God? Like, what's the deal? Never the least bit hesitant to indulge in a remembrance of God, Tech responded. It will be beyond me to say that I know Allah, he admitted, adding, that would be far beyond any man. I have a nearness to him, though. I know some of his attributes. What are some of his attributes? He is Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate. He is the Alim, the all-knowing. He is Al-Haq, the truth. Al-Musawwir, the fashion of designers. What is this, some of the names you guys gave him in Islam? She questioned, unfamiliar with God having possessed such names. Stop saying you guys, he instructed her. Why? Because you are Muslim. Daddy, I ain't no damn Muslim. She covered her mouth as she sat up, pushing her mellow aside. I'm sorry, she apologized quickly. I ain't mean to say that like that, but let me tell you something, Tech said. The grill on his face wasn't light anymore. You are flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood. I carry your life before you carried it. She visibly struggled with that concept, but allowed him to continue uninterrupted. I'm way further acquainted with you than you are your own self. The Holy Quran instructs man that the messengers are nearer to the believers than their own jugular veins. Now you think your mommy is a superwoman because she carries you in her body, and her props are certainly due in that regard. But I'm your father. I'm here to guide you for the betterment of your soul. So you saying, in order for my soul to be right, I gotta be Muslim? She asked, not concerning with his line of reasoning. I'm saying, in order for your soul to be right, you gotta do the right thing. And Al-Islam is the natural way of life. You cannot be practicing what the prophets taught and not end up on the path of Islam. That's an impossibility. While she was thinking about that, he came still. And that's not to say that Christians and Jews aren't going to heaven, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ascribed perfect rank and order to all things. So if they're righteously serving the one God, and we're righteously serving the one God, and we're making 1,500 prayers per year, and they're making a third of that, we're not going to be, nor are we at the same level. And if any of us are serving any other besides the one God, associating partners with him and setting up idols, then woe to them. Gwen let her THC-infused thoughts ponder on his words as she stared at the ceiling of the van like the stars of the night sky. I've been writing, she said reluctantly. Yeah? About God? No, not particularly. Conversing with him was so difficult, she thought. He had this weird way of knowing where she was going with her words and beating her there. How'd you know that? She asked. The apple don't fall far from the tree, Gwen, Tex said with a firm but affectionate expression on his face. The apple don't fall far from the tree. September 10th, 2010. I got in. Gwen flung the door to her room open. She heard the morning news on her dad's radio in the next room. Up next on Sunday morning news at 9, a local girl is dead this morning after being trampled by a train last night. No words as to whether she fell or was pushed. Gwen took the acceptance letter from the envelope and waved at him. I got into Albany College, Daddy. Tech looked like some sort of young guru with his turban and heavy fleece reading his book. I knew you would, he said, truly not surprised. Yours had to have been one of the best personal statements they ever read. He kissed her on the forehead. So you start in January, huh? Yes, I'm so excited. She blossomed with joy. She actually made it to her destination despite the unpaved, dark, trying road. Despite people around her thinking she fell off or lost a step. She attained her goal, and at a faster rate than her peers. Starting college in January put a half an academic year ahead of everyone else. Call your mother and let her know, Tech instructed his enthusiastic young lady. 39 minutes later, Tech laid his head of hair back and wrapped his muscular arm around Gwen's leg. What you making for dinner? You thinking about dinner already, huh? She mocked as Tech was in the middle of his Ramadan fast. They lingered in a light laugh. I've been wanting some mashed potatoes and lamb chops. She said, smiling at him and nodding her head as if silently trying to force him to want the same thing. You look just like your mother when you did that, Tech said. I still think you need to try to holler at her. That chick you had over here the other night is not half as cute as my mommy. Who, Stacy? Whatever her name is, the one with the short haircut, trying to be cute. Tech chuckled. You know how many times I tried with your mother, Gwen? He said back, smiling as an old man would, lost in a pleasant thought. I remember when I met your mother. I thought she was so beautiful. Yes, she is music manifested, a beautiful, hard melody of brown, unique almost to a strange extent, Gwen said. Tech looked deep into her as if he could read her mind by doing so. And Gwen knew that he could. Where you got them words from? God, she affirmed. Tech shook his head ever slightly, having completely understood. Ah, yes, my Lord. My Lord grants inspiration to whom he pleases, and he restricts measures to whom he pleases. You have much to learn regarding the law. The job of the messengers is to preach the clear public message. You're going to have to learn how to refine your testament as to simplify it for the sake of being easily understood by the common man. This is essential before you go forth on your missions. If ever Gwen went deep, Tech saw it befitting to go deeper. And he was deep down there with that one, but she caught it. She gave thought as she continued twisting one of his dreads. Yeah, Allah got a crazy mission coming up for me, she said, spaced out by the thought. 8:32 p.m., the same night. Gwen turned onto the block and immediately noticed Stacy's beat-up little car parked in front of the black Lincoln. It was the second one from the corner. She couldn't make them out yet, but it was only right to assume that the moving bodies inside were that of Stacy and her father. Gwen dramatically slowed her pace, peeping in the car from the back. She could see her dad's magnificent crown of locks sprawled all across his back and shoulders. He was talking. Gwen wondered what her ever so reserved dad could be saying to have Stacy laughing the way she was. And he was just sitting there smiling all the way. Gwen hopped up on the curb, still reading him. He looked good, she thought, in his big champion sweater. His smile was as white and innocent as an ex-con's could be, and Stacy was finding every excuse to touch him during laughing. Fast bitch, Gwen thought. She walked into the basement apartment. Daddy had weights and shoes sprawled all across the first room, as usual. She dropped a Nike bag next to her dad's, and something in that made her feel good. She made her way to her small living quarters as the general of the home. She had the mop, she thought, looking at the floor. She opened a refrigerator and do some food shopping, too. Tech came in not too much later after that. He had on a baggy camouflage jacket, and a leather-fitted hat swooped over the right side of his obviously grinning face. You nasty. She cut right to the chase as he came into the living room. Tech busted out laughing. Excuse me? I saw y'all. Saw us what? She groaned as her mother would and stepped back into the kitchen. Her father made no haste about getting to her. He took off his coat and boots and emptied the things out of his pocket onto the mahogany stand next to the couch. As Gwen turned, the wall that divided him from her, he stopped and looked at her. She could see his face. He was in a state where he wasn't feeling any pain. What you know about men, he asked. I know y'all some nasty dogs. Oh, really? He said smoothly, but one could tell that he still took some degree of offense to her sentiments. And his next question proved so. And what are you? I'm a lady, Daddy. Don't try to turn this on me. We're talking about you, she attested, all abrazen. You wasting your time and energy on these birds, she said derogatorily, and even more so unapologetically. I'm a princess. I'm fly. I'm cute. Somehow, the unfolding of her words and thoughts were providing a case against her. She wanted to go deep, but she simply couldn't. And she could read her father's judgmental face as if he had all the answers and were watching her make a fool of herself. I'm smart, Gwen said in defense of herself as Tex shook his head. You don't got to prove yourself to me, baby. I know your value. I am you. But you can't go through your life thinking you're better than your brothers who you're supposed to be walking alongside of. You're of the earth, not above it. Even if your turn is 16 tomorrow, he added in lighten the mood. You know it, Gwen agreed in a sassy pose. See, that's what I'm talking about, Tex said. What? You're going to college. Those boys are going to be circling around you like vultures. Stop flashing and posing and looking to put yourself on display. Be modest and humble and reserved. Whatever, Daddy. Modest and reserved ain't what you was sitting up there kissing on in the car earlier. September 25th, 2010. Happy birthday, sister. Gwen was greeted by Candace as she answered her phone. Thank you, Gwen said, glowing. And don't forget, I want you to ride with me to the party. Yeah, definitely, Candace accepted as a privilege. Where you said it's at again? At a spot on 103rd Street. Meet me on the downtown platform of the 6th train at 4:30. The 103rd Street location was just some shit she made up on the spot to enforce the strategy. The party was going to be in the community center in the Clinton Projects on 110th Street. I bet. So I'm going to go get ready, Candace said. All right. Gwen sat in the privacy of her room and considered deeply what she was going to do. She may have been in a position where she could just walk away and hope, but plans were made to be executed by those who had the strength to see things through. She promised herself the night that they almost knocked her senseless that she was going to inflict justice on her nemesis, Aisha. But her plans changed as her life moved on. Then she had the nerve to pursue Gwen where she rested her head, mock her deceased brother, and threaten her mother. She had to go. Gwen knew that this would have to be the last days of her sinning, so she planned on letting it all out. She splashed a few shots of Burberry body on her waist. She stood up and straightened out a daringly tight Alexander McQueen one-piece. She walked over to her dresser and pulled out the prepaid phone she bought especially and only for today's mission. What up, Blue? Sisters heard that bitch Gwen having a Sweet 16 at Clinton Community Center. We about to bum rush that bitch. The sisters gonna meet on the 6th train platform. Gwen read over the text one last time before sending it. Ted came in the room and stole a look at her. Something nearly resembling a smile lay idly on his face. He shoved his hands into his pockets. What? Gwen asked, feeling pride in the way he was looking at her. Thank you for this party, Daddy. You're a cool cat. Cool cat, he mocked. You sure you don't want to put nothing on that backside of yours? Daddy, he folded his arm. You're going to have to cover yourself up, he said, professing the law with no visible will to enforce it at the moment. Soon, Daddy, not tonight, she said to her father. I'm actually thinking about joining you on your fast for the last days of Ramadan. You think God will forgive me my sins if I did that? Yes, he said with confidence in his smile. I'm sure God will forgive you any sins you may need forgiven for if you finish Ramadan with me. Good, then it's on, she said, grabbing the duffel bag she prepared for tonight. Good. He had a strong, fatherly grin, his jawbone tough with muscle and hair. I love you, young lady. Gwen was able to look at him in the eye for the first time since she was a young child and authentically respond to his liking. I love you too, Daddy. 4:34 p.m., the same day. This was Candace's favorite time of the year. The dog days of the summer were behind them. 'Tis the season of waking up to a touch of chill in the air. The colors of new life will be coming in soon, a new beginning. Candace certainly could use a resurrection. Gwen was going to college. They couldn't be in a better position. Candace hustled down the stairs to the 110th Street subway station. A brother in a black hoodie offered to swipe her past the turnstile for $1 and opposed to the $2.25 that she would be paying otherwise. She declined without saying a word and wiped her Metro card into the turnstile card reader. She looked around for Gwen, who she expected to be waiting for her, upset for her being late. No one was around except the boy sitting on the benches, apparently on his way to a baseball game, and an old Puerto Rican man sporting a USS Indianapolis cap, his nose running due to the weather shift. Looking up to navigate a course, she saw the baseball player apparently waving her over. Candace screwed up her face before looking over her shoulders to see if it was perhaps a call for someone behind her. There was no one there. She turned back to the boy, whose fitted cap was pulled so low over his young mellow brown face, similar to the way his backside was pulled down in the benches he was sitting on. "Oh my God," Candace said to herself as she approached and noticed that the ball boy was actually Gwen. "You got a game later?" she joked, expecting to crack the rigor within Gwen's face to no avail. Gwen didn't bother responding to her or acknowledging the joke. She just gazed out at the dark train tracks in front of her. After enough time had passed so that Candace was sure that Gwen wasn't responding to her question, Gwen spoke. "You know, sometimes my father could be the most caring, loving, handsome, wonderful person." She commenced with hints of tears in her eyes. Then other times, she shook her head in a mix of mild disgust and some other negative energy. "He can be the nastiest, meanest, biggest asshole on the planet." She had a reputation of being sharp, intelligent beyond her years. It was generally understood that she didn't say anything without a strong root of reason. Candace only wished that Gwen wasn't going to pull a plug on their relationship, that she would remain patient with her flawed father. An electronic advisory call from the station's loudspeaker. "There's a Brooklyn Brown 6 train one station away. But I must say, I do understand him more," Gwen added with a hint of optimism. Candace turned to look her in the eyes as she continued expressing her thoughts. "People are something else. You try to bring them the word of God, and they try to bring you death and destruction," Gwen said, leaning back like her father would have, as if Allah had granted her further dimension to her thought. Her face, a canvas of deep contemplation, and that was only evident to those who had the privilege of knowing her. An outsider would perceive her as dazed, lost in nothingness. Either way, she went there, whatever it is she went mentally. And then she came back quickly. She used the back of her index finger to soothe out her wonderfully brown eyebrows. As usual, the strap hangers of the city appeared from their mutual hiding places after the station's electronic alert went off announcing the arrival of the downtown 6 train. Gwen's eyes were a dramatic, amazingly sharp, beautiful tale of analysis. She read everything. Therefore, there was no lying in her presence, only truthfulness to its upper degrees. So when she saw Aisha walk into the platform, her eyes foretold the destruction that was to come. "Walk with me," she demanded of Candace, whose mind was now racing to decipher what was about to go down. Gwen closed herself up within her outfit, hiding behind the brim of her baseball cap and strolling like a teenage boy would. Candace knew that Gwen had something up her sleeve, figuratively and perhaps literally. The headlights of the approaching train announced its coming before any of its other properties. Gwen turned over her shoulder. This is going to be the last time I spill blood. Although her words suggested a hint of remorse as to her actions to come, her body got ready, particularly her hands, which stiffened with her will. She was in, locked and loaded. As they approached, it became apparent that Aisha had no idea that it was her arch enemy standing beside her. Inshallah, Candace attested, barely moving her lips, looking at Aisha, who was now looking at her. Right, if it be the will of Almighty Allah, Gwen agreed, looking straight, speaking low. What's poppin'? Aisha asked Candace rather aggressively, as if Candace's known affiliation with Gwen marked her as prey despite their mutual Jessica affiliation. Candace said hello with her head, and then Gwen said goodbye to her Aisha issues. With the physicality of a baseball player that she was dressed up as, Gwen gathered her every muscle and pushed Aisha off the edge and over the platform. Time froze. There was no doubt that the train trampled the girl. The impact sounded like a car accident auto. This, before the gut-wrenching crunch, that was Aisha's skeleton crumbling. The train brakes screeched as the iron horse came to an all-too-late halt. Horrified, Candace looked up. Gwen was gone. 8 minutes later. Gwen's red Jimmy Choo heels and thunder thighs did most of the talking as the fresh princess stepped through the door. A stark contrast from the gear she had on 10 minutes ago. She knew in her heart that these were her last days of living like this. She felt cheap, exposed, hellbound. But she knew she had to do it big tonight. She would party any would-be pain or memory away with liquor, loud music, and friends. Red Out was the first person to approach the birthday girl. Red Out and her late brother were good friends. In many ways, Red Out was like a brother to her. But even he had to bite his lips when he saw the young Coco Diva make her way to the dance floor. Damn, Gwen, was all he could muster up as he shook his head in a lustful shame. What's up? She asked, smiling, wishing that she wasn't able to read his mind the way she was. How you? Ain't nothing. It's your world, he said, as he handed her a Gap bag that she took as a birthday gift. I can't stay long. I just want to drop that off to you. Be good, he said before kissing her on the cheek. Big shout out to my little homegirl turning 16 today. They saying she's something like the Black Kate Middleton in the hood. Ha ha, my girl Gwen. The DJ, Drama King, shouted out Gwen to her delight. In a moment, she pointed to him and gave him a wink and a gun. In that direction, her eyes caught hold of her sister Hollis next to the DJ booth. Gwen was pleased to see her. She pulled out her cell phone and texted Candace her true location of the party. Then she proceeded to lose herself in the moment. Gwen was curious while all her sisters were crowded in one area, in the middle of the dance floor, especially since it didn't seem to be any beef, and there was no one setting off any flashy dance routines. She made her way over. Also, big shout out to Lena Leslie and Lioness for stopping through and showing some love. We doing it big uptown. Lioness and Gwen seemed to have noticed each other at the same time. Lioness approached. As she turned, so did the massive general of her security staff, who was zealously overlooking her and Lena Leslie. The embrace was strange. Since they were both Jessica, they had the option of doing the set dap. Since they were ex-in-laws, they had the option of faking their way through a hug. They chose neither. Lioness handed Gwen the Tiffany bag in her hand. Happy birthday, she said. Thank you, Gwen said, shining like a star. Lioness was now a bona fide pop star, and Lena Leslie's presence alone would keep this party on the minds of hundreds in attendance for a long time. Happy birthday, Hollis greeted as she joined the circle, as did Sade, Princess, and her ex-boyfriend Justin. The party was on. By the time Candace arrived, Gwen had let her hair down. Candace looked at her good and hard. It was as if everything else had stopped for a moment. "Welcome to the club, bitch," she said, her eyes stern with Gwen's, as if to represent the rigors of this new way of life. "Here, take some of this," Gwen said, tipsy, almost forcing Candace to drink the cup of Hennessy. "We're gonna be all right," she said, stumbling away. 2:01 a.m., the same night. Now Gwen knew that God was real. Because this wasn't guilt and vain pulling at her heart. It was God's pending judgment. This is why she planned Aisha's demise around the last party she would attend in the near future. What Gwen now knew that she didn't know yesterday was that she had many things to make right with Allah. She knew he was frowning upon her. His righteous nature was suppressing her. She needed an outlet. Gwen heard her father's 80s music coming through the walls. Shirelles, Everything I Miss at Home. She heard the moan of a woman in deep pleasure calling out over a break in the blasted music. Her dad was obviously busy. Perhaps it was for the best. Had she been able to talk to him now, she would surely confess her sin. She grabbed a notebook and turned to a clear leaf. She put her pen to work. "I am a sinner. It has been proven true against me that I am weak in the flesh. I fall victim to sin again and again. I can't seem to ever do my best. I am lost. I need your saving grace. I need your warmth and comfort. I need to see your face." December 25th, 2010. "You can't even come spend the holiday with your mother?" Gwen flipped the pancake she was making onto his uncooked face, then switched the side that she was holding the phone to. "Dang, Ma, I can't spend one Christmas with my father? Gosh, your father wasn't worried about spending Christmas with you for the past 16 years. Ma, put him on the phone," Bernadette demanded. A moment later, Gwen could tell by the look on her dad's face that she was saying something to try to extend his patience, and so he smiled. Gwen was sure in many ways that her mother could feel his content on the other end. She was probably enraged. Gwen finished decorating her Christmas morning pancakes with strawberries, honey, and cinnamon. "All right, Bernadette," Tex said, shaking his head, ready to put the phone down. "All right, Merry Christmas to you too," he grinned wide as he hung up. "She be bugging." Tech nodded affirmatively. "Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, God, for granting me and my daughter this time to reestablish our bond and love for one another." He gripped Gwen's hand tighter. "This past few months have been an amazing demonstration of your mercy and the fact that you are the one who answers prayers. I pray, Allah, that you will bless my daughter in her endeavors in college, that she may see what it is that you want her to see and do what it is you want her to do. I ask that you give us another opportunity like this again, that we may grow together in your mighty, holy name. Ameen." They dug into their plates. "This looks good, baby," Tex said. "Thank you for this." "No problem, Daddy. It's the least I can do," Gwen said, passing him the syrup. "I still don't believe they will fire you 2 days before Christmas. How you going to pay the rent?" "Allah will provide. Just make sure you don't forget about your old papa when you come up with a cure for cancer or something in college." She wanted to offer to stay with him to help him secure whatever was next, but she knew he wouldn't hear of it. Tech was about sticking to the script, even through strenuous tests of faith such as this. His faith in God didn't allow him to perceive things as a setback. They were only tests of faith and strength. Therefore, they both had to move forward with their lives. Gwen was heading to upstate New York to further her education and seek a God's good pleasure, and Tech was heading back into the wind to make his music. So this afternoon, they ate slowly. They sat around and indulged in rare, idle talk. They bathed in each other's presence, cherishing these moments as they both understood that tomorrow was not promised. But if there was a tomorrow, it was going to be filled with tedious, arduous challenges of devotion to overcome their sins of yesterday. The word went forth. January 19th, 2011. Her outfit for the day was laid across her bed. A forest green V-neck from Banana Republic, brown cargo pants, and her beef and broccoli high heels. She had her accordion folder and laptop accounted for. After outfitting her entire body with a coat of lotion, she got dressed and was almost ready to head out. Her roommate Aaliyah had already left for the main campus before Gwen woke up. Aaliyah was pre-med, and all of their classes were super early in the morning. So far, the classes were the easy part about college. Trying to find the classes and dealing with all these new faces was the hard part. Gwen found her circle with the girls from Rochester next door and the boys who lived in her residence hall. She mostly tried to keep a low profile as she didn't come to college to reaffirm or expand on her popularity, but to, as her father often put it, seek from Allah's bounty. Constantinople was controlled by the Byzantium. In 1326, the Ottomans took the city of Bursa. This enabled Osman and his emerging empire to actually establish themselves in the land and move from a nomadic way of life to an established way of living. Professor McGuire used his laser pointer to identify the areas between the land of the Mediterranean and Black Seas. Professor McGuire was a tall and vocal Anglo-Saxon that needed no assistance directing his students. Gwen took a bite from her cinnamon bagel and went back to taking notes. She noticed many upperclassmen around using digital voice recorders instead of their hands and pens. She decided to head back to the bookstore after class to pick up one for herself. They were very successful in establishing sort of bureaucracies to allow the people, the Christians and the Jews who they conquered, to practice their religion and carry on life as they were. Yes, they did have to pay the jizya, the tax, but even with that, many of them actually had a better standard of living under the Ottomans than they had previously enjoyed. Now write this down, May 29th, 1453. That's the date that the Muslims breached the walls of the city of Constantinople. Within hours, the entire city was under Ottoman control, including the Hagia Sophia, the largest enclosed space in the world. The single greatest church in the world was now a mosque. 8:07 p.m., the same night. The only time Gwen left her glamour at home was when she was going to the gym. Cheap black leggings, an oversized football jersey, and an old beat-up pair of Air Max were her attire. Tonight, she was going in on her abs and legs. She had just finished a 2-hour study session, and physicality was exactly what she needed. She left aside her cell phone, stress, even her jacket. She met the bitter chill in the air that came with the 3-minute walk from the dorm to the campus gym with a light jog. 2 hours later. Gwen finished her workout, stretched afterward, and went to Doherty Hall to order her dinner. She could feel the manifestation of her squats that she had done earlier, and therefore she used a sweater to cover her backside before she entered the after-hours dining hall. "Let me get a 10-piece wings, well done," she said as she got to the register. "Mild or spicy?" the girl who Gwen had seen several times in the sociology department asked, looking at Gwen like she remembered her also. "Mild," Gwen said, handing the clerk her student ID. "Make sure they're well done, please." "I got you." As she waited for her order, she took a look around. Those boys are so corny, she thought, looking away from the boys who were looking at her. Back in the world, she called Candace as she waited for her food. "What's up, sister? What's up, sis? What's going on in Albany?" "It's coming on good. My classes are challenging, but they're not wild hard, so I'm gonna be all right." "All right, cool. You gotta stop acting like you the only bitch going to school again, too." They both laughed. I'm on your father's college program too. I'm coming right behind your ass. How's he doing? Gwen asked. He's good. I haven't seen him in a minute. We just be emailing each other. He be sending me things I need to study and do every day. Number 13, the girl yelled from behind the counter. I want to come up there for a visit, Candace said. I bet. I just got to ask my roommate if you could stay, but I'm sure she'll be cool. Tell her don't get fucked up. Nah, man, don't say that, Gwen laughed. She's cool. She a little Muslim chick from Cali. Another set of girls who constituted the New York City freshman class walked into the diner as Gwen was walking out. The majority of the first-year students formed their bonds during the first semester of the academic year, which Gwen missed by starting in January. What's up? She made sure to keep things on a high and by basis with them as she learned firsthand how one could get caught up in keeping certain company. Even for all her efforts of discretion and keeping off the radar, people still found ways to cling to the bold-bodied beauty. Both students and staff. Gwen had an attractive glow that came along with the new peace in her life. And as opposites attract, people looking to attain the same glow and peace often looked to her. It was weird, but it was all reality. Gwen would often think to herself, they only knew what I had to do to get here. The peace that she now enjoyed was a matter of getting away from all the sins that her hands had laid, which were many. Her life and opportunities were all gifts from God, none of which were to be taken for granted. It was that attitude that got her closer to God, and it was her getting closer to God that made the people want to get closer to her. 1:31 a.m., the same night. Gwen looked up at the time and was impressed that she'd been going for over an hour. She was in the zone, easily grasping what she was reading and identifying potential test questions and highlighting them. She felt highly collegiate, especially since she could exercise her brain while playing music low from YouTube on her laptop. One of her father's videos popped up as a related video to the Mos Def song she had just finished playing. She clicked on it. She never heard the song, and apparently most of the known world hadn't either, as the hits count was only a humble 3,319. The logo she'd seen scattered here and there from time to time welcomed her. She remembered getting a notarized letter in the mail with the same logo sealed on the bottom, entitling her to half a Tex record company. Gwen turned the volume down as she peeped over to Aaliyah, who was sleeping. Tech, and what Gwen assumed was his glory days, was all up in the camera, spitting his God rap. He had a nice flow. It became clear to her at that moment that his mission and talents had found a home in her. This is how her poems, which now filled up 2 composition notebooks with edgy, flowing hard testaments, sounded. Perhaps this is why he never seemed to be in a rush to be beside her. Perhaps he knew he was already in her. 5:41 a.m., the next morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Aaliyah gracefully swung her head to the opposite side of her shoulder and quietly repeated the words. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. She stood to her feet and noticed that Gwen was awoke. Was I too loud? She asked. No, I'm used to that by now. My father's a Muslim. Aaliyah's face grew bright with approval. Oh, mashallah, mashallah, she attested. I thought you said your father was a rapper. He is. Aaliyah took a strange look to her face. Rap music is considered haram. It takes away from the remembrance of God. Haram? Gwen questioned. I'm sorry, that means against Islamic law. I know what the word haram means. I just don't know about that notion is what I'm saying. You can rap about God. I know that the Quran says that all things on the heavens and earth declare his glory. I'm sorry, what does that have to do with anything? Aaliyah asked. My father's music isn't haram, it's halal. Hip-hop music can be a conduit to bring a specific people the message of the prophets. You can't expect us all to get it like you got it. That wasn't God's will. I don't think either of us can speak to what God's will is, she said with a degree of authority. No, Gwen agreed, but we can look at the reality and deduct the truth from there. Hip-hop music hasn't been around for nearly a half a century for nothing. It's our thing. 1:07 a.m., the same day. One of Gwen's favorite parts about college were these lecture halls. She could be running a few minutes late or leave a few minutes early. So long as she took good notes and got the gist of the lecture, she was good. She slipped through one of the back doors as the professor was speaking. Suleiman was named after the great biblical king, King Solomon, known for having over 700 wives. Under Suleiman, the Ottoman fleet dominated the Mediterranean Sea. Gwen set her breakfast on the floor and put her BlackBerry ring on vibrate before opening her notebook. Suleiman was a man of many turbans, if you will. He was a conqueror, a legislator, patron, poet. 6:31 p.m., the same day. One of Gwen's extracurricular endeavors was attending the Black Student Union's general meetings on Wednesday evenings. This week's topic was Egypt and the recent overthrow of President Mubarak. As usual, Gwen slipped in on her own time. Even when she tried to stay low on the radar, people took notice when she entered the room. A colorful Coogee cardigan and curvy shape beneath her sweatpants didn't help in her efforts to try to escape the spotlight. Half of the guys in the room watched as she took a seat. And I think it's commendable. People all over the world are starting to fight for change and stand up and say, we're not going to take it anymore. Black people ain't never going to do nothing like that and get their shit together. Norris, a fellow freshman, added. But why not? Dolores, the Health and Human Services senior, asked. I don't know. Black people think. The community laughed. Out of nowhere, Cecil, a fifth-year senior, wearing his usual brown military jacket and outdated flat-top fade, shouted, famine is coming to North America. The room became embarrassingly quiet as Cecil nodded his head in support of himself. The word went forth. 50 minutes later. We're looking for talent for the BSU Gala on February 12th. If any of you rap, dance, sing, do poetry, or spoken word, please let Latifah sign you up to get on stage and do your thing. Everyone began to scatter as the meeting concluded. Gwen wondered if perhaps she could get across to her classmen in a poem which she failed to say to them over the past hour in the meeting. She walked up to the desk that the e-board was sitting behind. I want to sign up, she said. Okay, the graduate student said. Gwen, right? She asked. Yeah, Gwen confirmed, inwardly proud that she knew her name. What do you do? Poetry. February 12th, 2011. Gwen's mother led her by a hand and sort of gave Gwen up to him. Here, you take her, she hollered. Tech kneeled down and looked her straight in the eyes. Who is God? He had a certainty in him that he had instilled in her. She knew the answer to this question. He taught her when his dreads were shorter and when his body was less developed. God is the creator of the heavens and earth. What else has he created? Man and woman. Sister! Gwen felt Aaliyah's hand on her shoulder. Sister! She called as Gwen opened her eyes. You don't want to lay down? What time is it? Gwen asked, wiping the side of her mouth. 6:43, Aaliyah said. Where's your friend? Gwen tried to shake the lingering sleep and dream out of her head. Only the glance that she caught of Candace's weekend bag made her privy to Aaliyah's question. I guess she's in the shower, Gwen said as she got up. It was showtime. Gwen looked over her entire wardrobe for minutes upon minutes. What sort of message am I trying to send? She asked herself. After putting on an old cashmere sweater and blue jeans to a black Gap sweater with her super fitted stonewashed trues, she chose the comfort over style, and she went with her gray sweatsuit. Candace returned from the bathroom looking like she was the one getting on stage tonight. You ready to do this? She asked Gwen, who suddenly felt terribly underdressed. 2 hours later. I'm always watching you. Even in your sleep, under the covers, I can read you. I see right through you. I'm there. This is what God said to me the other day. So I kept away, just strolling along my way, heading to chemistry class, and as usual, I was late. Then it hit me. Why am I rushing if God is already with me? Where am I going and why? Is it riches I seek? Then why am I not praying for God to bestow his riches upon me from his bounty? Is he not the king? Is God not the true king? Well, let's live like it. Let us follow the steps of the brothers and sisters who said fuck the system and did fight it. Let us not live like cowards for all the days of our lives. Let us strive. Let us get really free so we can really be alive. Peace. Gwen could feel the uncertainty of the audience as she stood in silence before the mic. Cecil, the army coat-wearing senior, was the first to clap. He gave a standing ovation even. Then Barry clapped, and slowly, steadily, the applause came in. Just enough to make Gwen feel like she didn't have to pick her face up off the ground. And the word went forth.